Welcome to the stream, ladies and gentlemen. Glad to have you this evening, a bit earlier than our normal streams on Thursday nights, usually 7 p.m, so about 2 hours early. But of course, this is the day that Rukshan returns, so we're back to our normal scheduling from next week, and that's next week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. But tonight I'm going to do something special. I don't really do these reactions like this. Usually what I do is I see something, a debate that's kind of interesting, and recently I've just gone live and watched it straight with you and reacted in real time. This one's a bit different because yesterday I was watching this when it did come out while in the gym, or I haven't watched all of it, but most of it I did end up watching, and it was a surprisingly good debate. And I thought tonight, instead of the opposition podcast, I'll rewatch most of it and react with you guys, give you my thoughts along the way. And yes, like the title indicates from my perspective, Nick Fuentes got smashed in this debate when it comes to substance of the argument. But you guys make up your own mind as we watch it. I know the comment section of the internet today is very opinionated on this stuff, and often I don't think it's based in facts. So it's a great debate, and you can actually hear out the arguments of both sides. I think it's worth it, and I hope you enjoy watching it with me. Of course, like normal, you can get involved in the comments that are just scrolling only on YouTube. I don't know where we're streaming at the moment, but YouTube only. Every comment gets posted in that feed, but all the super chats I will naturally, through watching the debate with you, I will read them out. So thank you in advance for anybody that wants to support the stream by super chatting or just wants their comment read out. I know that some people may not necessarily support me, but they just enjoy making me read stuff that I don't want to read. Without further ado, let's get straight into today's debate. So we have, here it is. Give me 2 seconds. Guys, take a second to share the stream because it's you guys that make these streams so big. Just bear with me for 1 second. We'll just get a couple things ready before I actually start the debate. Let me know where you're tuning in from in the comments. All right. All right, let's get straight into it. So I've just brought it to the part where the debate basically starts. So this is the 5 minutes opening for each one. Let's get straight into it. I've put it at 1.25 so we don't have to watch it on normal speed. That gets super boring.
The floor for the next 5 minutes.
Thank you, Alex. Welcome, Nick. I am looking forward to our debate, and it's I'm thrilled to do it because free speech has been under attack, and you guys, Alex, Nick, Laura Loomer, and others have been deplatformed. I am a strong opponent of all of this, and for this reason, even though some people were like, "Why do you want to debate Nick Fuentes?" I'm like, no, there are taboo issues here that are being raised. They're not being adequately discussed. Some people run away from them. I don't run away from them. And I think it's a good idea to sort of have it out. And so that's really why I'm here. I want to defend Trump. I want to defend MAGA, Make America Great Again. I want to defend America First. Seems to me we have a big disagreement here about what America First means. And that's what I want to talk about. When we talk about making America great again, it's important to think about what made America great in the first place. Now, one obvious answer to that is that America became great by kind of looking inward and attending to its own problems, going back to the founders. But that is not only not entirely true, it's not true at all. Right after the American founding, Thomas Jefferson found out that there were these Barbary pirates in the Middle East. Now, they weren't attacking America. They weren't starting a war over here. But Jefferson basically dispatched an armed force to clobber them, to beat the heck out of them. Why? Because they were disrupting our interests. They were disrupting our trade. They were hurting our position in the world. So even though we had this infant democracy, clobbering bad guys is something that we started doing from the very beginning. Now, fast forward to, Alex, you and I are in Texas, And let's talk about the middle of the 19th century. Again, America's building a strong country. It's focused inward. But guess what? We get into a big war with Mexico. The Mexican War lasts about 4 years. We started the Mexican War. We go over there, get our troops into Mexico City, clobber the Mexicans, take a good chunk of Mexico, including a good chunk of Texas. Later, large parts of the country that were not part of America become added to the country. And we do this basically by force. Now, we have good reasons for it. I'm not going to go into the reasons, but the point is we did it. Fast forward now, I'm going to omit World War II and focus on Reagan. The Soviet Empire is gaining strength. The Soviet Union grabs 10 countries actually, between 1974 and 1980. They don't attack us. They're not waging war over here. And Reagan does not start a war with them either. But what he does do is he starts clobbering them in all kinds of ways. He clobbers them in Afghanistan. He clobbers them in Somalia, in Angola, in Mozambique, in Nicaragua. And we do it by supporting armed forces that are repelling these Soviet armies, and we win the Cold War. Who can deny that the world is better off and America's better off? That is America first. And that is making America great again. So when we're talking about making America great again, it has never meant, and it doesn't mean for Trump, a kind of, isolationism. I would even deny that it means no new wars. And I say that because no president who takes an oath to support the Constitution can make that absolute guarantee.
I love how many of you are triggered in the comments about the term woke right. The woke right is, and you'll see as it plays out in through this debate. The woke right is literally the woke left on the right. People that, if you don't like hearing it, it is essentially they make all the same arguments as the woke left. It's the horseshoe theory. It's literally people who ended up on the other side of that, who claim to be opposing the left and essentially meet up at the same point for a bunch of reasons. But whatever, if the term woke right is triggering you, it means you probably are woke right. But that's okay. That's okay. Just try to. I know you guys always talk about name calling and all this. It's just a term now that's been understood by many as to what it means. But just try to listen to the arguments of both sides and unpack it with me together, all right? Without getting too caught up on the woke right part of it.
Are all kinds of scenarios, and I'm happy to lay out about 6 of them, in which the United States would be drawn into a war. And so the pledge is made as a statement of principle, but Trump is the commander-in-chief, and it's his decision to make at a given time when the situation is dangerous enough that there should be a war. Now, there isn't a war going on in Iran, but I do want to say about the Iranians this. They are not a regional power like Iraq. This is, I think, one of the key differences. A lot of people think Iran is Iraq, and Saddam Hussein is the same as the mullahs, and Trump is the same as Bush. He's becoming like Bush. No.
Woke left and woke right support Israel. So what? Okay, you're on a delusional trip. The woke right and the woke left both agree on Israel, and they both hate Israel. One will say because it's essentially the Jews, the other will be because it's an oppressor, colonial, exactly what they say about America, Australia, pretty much every Western country, and they just hate England because it was the colonial power. The woke right, it's because it's, they call it the boogeyman Zionism, or that it's just essentially a Jewish state. They just don't really like Jews. But it all ends up in the same place. So yes, no, the woke right and the woke left do not like Israel. They both share that. That's, in fact, in the last couple of years, that's the one thing. They've both been consistently campaigning, and very often together. That's why you're seeing alliances between, woke left, Democrats, so AOC aligning themselves with, Tucker Carlson. And so it's those two groups on each ends of the spectrum that have found a bunch of agreement in their arguments. And it's often, at the moment, it's in the last couple of years, it's been Israel's really highlighted it, but it's about their whole, the way they approach, all these issues. So this debate's about the whole Iran thing and about no more new wars, no wars in general, agreements, all that kind of stuff. It's the way that they approach it, and you'll see it'll play. Like, I've actually watched it, so I'm confident in saying that you'll understand the difference in the term. If you're coming in good faith, trying to work out what people mean by woke left, woke right, and why it's so similar to the woke left, you'll get it by the end of this debate.
Iran has a global ideology, and they always have. The reason that they chant...
Left, right, centre, we all hate genocide. No, mate. Firstly, everyone hates genocide. There is no real genocide. The difference between the centre left, centre right, is they recognise that there is no genocide, and they recognise it's a buzzword just like the woke left uses when they describe Australia and when they campaign, and you see it, like when they campaign to tear down everything that's Australian. They want to change Australia Day. They want to change the flag. They want to completely erase the Australian culture and the way of life here, because they believe that we are all settlers here. It's all the same language that they apply to Israel. So no, but it's not true. It's the woke left, the woke right, who use buzzwords in their argument to back up this false narrative. The false narrative, whether it's about Australia or whether it's about something like Israel. The difference is the woke right are either often too silly to realise that they're making the same arguments that can be applied to the countries in which they live, or they're disingenuous and they don't realise that you're ending up to make arguments against yourself. But watch it.
Death to America. They also chant death to Israel, but death to America is the main chant, and death to Israel is the secondary chant. Why? Because we are the main enemy. We are the great Satan. Israel may be the little Satan, but we are the great Satan. And we are controlling Israel, not the other way around. At least that's how the Iranians see it. The little Satan is...
Yes, AOC and Tucker agree on not killing in the name of America. Sure, but so that's the point. AOC and Tucker now make the same argument. Doesn't make it true. And that's my point, is the woke left and the woke right are the same. You're making my point in the comments. The fact that you're making these arguments and you're comparing the two and you say they agree on one thing, that's exactly why there is the woke left and the woke right. Because you can't say that Tucker Carlson and AOC are the same. They have the same view on everything politically and socially. No. But there's specific things now that have been highlighted in which they make the same arguments. And the difference is if you bring it, yes, I agree with you, fake right. All right, I'm not going to stop it every second to engage in the conversations. Anyone who wants to really make comments can super chat and I'll make sure to get back to it.
Not telling the great Satan what to do. It's actually the opposite. The Iranian goal is a global caliphate that obviously involves global supervision, Sharia law, bringing it here, infiltrating this country, terror cells. And the nuclear weapons are just taking this global ideology and giving it enormous power. There's an old saying that says, what do you call a dictator who has nuclear weapons? And the answer is, sir. What that means is that when a guy gets nukes, he's on a completely different level. You've got to, in a sense, be deferential in a way that you otherwise wouldn't. So here's Iran. They are cooking these nukes. They are building this uranium. They're enriching it way beyond any peaceful purposes. And Trump says, look, it's in our interest that they not have this weapon. Yes, it's in Israel's interest as well, but we're not doing it for Israel. We're doing it because we don't want them to have a nuclear weapon.
Okay, Dinesh.
Exactly, and that's the point here when it comes to the nuclear argument with Iran. Put Israel out of it for a second. If you look at something like North Korea, the only reason why nobody can tell or engage in North Korea in any practical way is that they've already got the nukes. So there's nothing we can do. We can just let them live to themselves. The difference between something like North Korea, and I've said this many times, and somebody like Iran is, as Dinesh described, their aim, their stated aim is an Islamic caliphate, which by definition, so their ideology believes that the entire world has to become Muslim, and they've got to be willing to die for that cause. A Shia, Muslim, whatever, so if you combine, so North Korea is bad enough. North Korea, nobody can control, and China, Russia, whatever, all these nuclear powers that don't align with the West, don't believe in freedom, democracy. They're communists, socialists, whatever. They're bad enough. We shouldn't want them to have nuclear weapons anyways. But the point in this case, for America specifically without Israel, obviously for Israel it's even more so, but for America it's that you don't want them to get to the point where it's yes sir, that we have to, now they get to dictate international policy, and we have to sit there and just accept what they're saying. Otherwise, we're risking a full-blown nuclear war. Not the war that people like Nick Fuentes here, or even Alex Jones that's hosting this, and the entire woke right, that they were threatening was going to happen if Trump actually acted in that preemptive strike, but a real nuclear war. If Iran was able to achieve, if Trump let Iran obtain a nuclear weapon, we would be having a very different discussion, and it wouldn't just be a North Korea situation. It would be North Korea if he was jihadi.
That's about 5.5 minutes. We'll come back to you. You guys have a free-for-all in a moment. Nick Fuentes, and something you said, Dinesh, I'm just going to add a small caveat and then go back to you guys. Because I meant to say it up front. I appreciate you doing this debate. I appreciate Nick and you guys having this idea. I forget who came up with it, but...
Let me just read a super chat. I'll do it throughout. What have we got? Brett, welcome to tonight's stream. Evening, RV. Milo will have children before Nick Fuentes. Nick needs to meet a nice groper and settle down. I agree with you. It's funny. It's often the people that preach the most about family values that don't tend to have one. But yeah, the obsession with people like Nick and Israel, and specifically Jews. Nick, at least I give Nick credit for a few things. Firstly, he's not a dumb guy. He's articulate. And you'll see in this debate, he knows how to debate, because even when he's losing an argument, he knows how to kind of backtrack and confidently do so with, like, if you're not actually listening to what he's saying, you think that, oh no, he makes a point, he makes an argument, but he doesn't. He's just confident in the way he's presenting it. But we'll unpack it as it comes along. But I agree with you. He should try. What isn't he this great Christian? How can he not? Can he just not get a girl? Or I know a lot of people think he's gay. I don't know. I don't really care. It's up to him. Each to their own. Anyways, Alex Jones, just thanking for both of them for coming on.
If I remember correctly, Nick challenged you and you said sure, and then here we are 2 weeks later. So thank you both for doing this. But exactly, what we're doing is what the left, who is diabolical against free speech, does not want. They don't want real debates.
My obsession, keep kvetching over. I like how you say that. You think that I'm obsessed. You got people, you think I'm kvetching. Literally, Nick Fuentes' entire platform, and people like him, their entire platform is kvetching about Jews. But, okay, welcome to the stream. Make sure to share it.
And so this is very, very healthy and very, very pro-freedom, pro-America. And I appreciate you both for being here. Just wanted to add that. So thanks for reminding me, Dinesh D'Souza. All right, Nick Fuentes, you've got about 5.5, 6 minutes because Dinesh went a little bit over because I didn't stop him. So Nick Fuentes of America First.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And I'd like to start out by saying as well, I appreciate Dinesh D'Souza for doing the debate. And I actually appreciate him saying that because it is true. We have both been brutally censored, and I know that Dinesh was also targeted by the Obama administration. So, we're really all sort of in the same boat in terms of we've all been persecuted to some extent. So I appreciate him saying that. But I'd like to move on and get into the subject of the debate. And I actually like how Dinesh framed it. I agree with him. The central question concerning the Iran...
I don't think Avi knows what woke means. Woke is the coined term by the left where they said they awakened, they were woken to the truth. That's what they call. And the woke right, the one we're talking about, they call themselves noticers. They're noticing. They're also awake. So I know what woke means. You guys just don't want to accept that the woke left is the same as the woke right. They're exactly the same. They even call themselves the same thing. One calls themselves woke. The other one doesn't want to be associated to them, so they call themselves noticers. But nice try.
War is, what does America First mean? What is the United States involvement in...
By the way, that was me just interacting with one of the comments, not what Nick was saying. Sorry. Sometimes I'm going between the comment and engaging in what they're saying.
Iran, or what should it be? And how does that conform to the stated goal of putting our country first, making America great again, and pursuing the American strategic interest? And without going into the Barbary Wars or Reagan or any of that, we don't need to go back that far. I think we need to talk about the current strategic landscape in the Middle East. And we need to get some things down first analytically before we proceed. And I'm actually going to pick up where Dinesh left off at the end and kind of start with that premise, because that is, I think, the mainstream premise. Let's say that's a status quo accepted premise of the U.S. Media or the conservative media, is that Iran is an apocalyptic regime. They have global ambitions. They're led by religious zealots and fanatics. They're racing towards a bomb because they want to attack Israel and the United States. And I would say that with that analytical framework, you probably would say that it's justified that we go to war with Iran. I would probably agree under those circumstances. But I would clarify a couple of things. Let's say that in the first place, this is not the first regime that has been described this way. When we were at war with the Soviet Union, it was conservative military planners that said the exact same thing. They said the Soviets are a nihilistic death cult. We can't negotiate with them. Khrushchev said, we will bury them. They want to destroy the United States. Of course, we negotiated with them. Of course, Nixon had détente, and eventually we negotiated with Gorbachev, and the wall came down, and we didn't have to go to war. We said the same thing about Maoist China. They killed 70 million people. They're a communist death cult. We negotiate with them all the time. They joined the World Trade Organization. I don't think anybody would argue that communism is not a nihilistic global ideology with ambitions to take over the planet. It certainly did. It always had. Yet we negotiated. Let's also talk about Iran's nuclear program. And once again, let's sort of do some housekeeping. Iran does not have a nuclear bomb. They're not currently pursuing a nuclear bomb. And what you would call Iran is a nuclear...
Yeah, he's very confident they're not pursuing a nuclear bomb. So, based on what? Because Nick Fuentes says so. And forget about Dinesh answers a lot of these issues a lot better than I ever can. But the idea that they're not pursuing a nuclear bomb is just stupid. Why else would they be enriching their uranium? Why would it be at 60% now and 90% is only a few weeks away? Why? No one's denying that that's where they're at. In fact, that's what the international body found in the report. That was the basis behind the preemptive attacks. The point is you can't argue whether they were going to achieve it, even if it was just to prove that they could within weeks, using that as a deterrent. That is the entire goal. But whatever, Nick Fuentes says so because it happened to be the Jews.
Threshold state. They're engaging in something, and this is technical, it's called nuclear hedging. This is where you have the technology, the expertise, and the infrastructure to make a nuclear weapon, but you don't actually build one. Why do you maintain the threshold latent nuclear status? You maintain that in the event that the security situation changes. There's a few countries.
So that you can create one very quickly and then use it. That's the only reason why it would pose a threat to any other country. The only reason why nuclear hedging, or whatever he wants to call it, is a threat to anyone is because, all right, even if it's true that they don't possess it now, the only way that it can be used as a deterrent by an Islamist state that has expansionist goals that threatens everyone. The only reason they need it, the only way they can use it as a deterrent is if it's believable that it is achievable before anyone can preemptively strike them. So it's like saying I'm going to have it tomorrow and I can use it, which is almost the same as saying as I have it and I can use it tomorrow. What's the difference?
Actually, not just Iran, they're in the exact same boat. And those countries are South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan. They're all considered nuclear threshold states. They have the expertise, the infrastructure, the technology to make a bomb. Why do they have that expertise? Why do they maintain the threshold status? Because they're on the doorstep of China. China's a much more powerful country, and they themselves have a native nuclear program. They engage in nuclear hedging in the event that they need to deter a threat from a regional adversary. Does this sound familiar? Why is Iran pursuing nuclear hedging? Why do they have a threshold status? They have this because Israel is the only country in the Middle East, actually, that has an undeclared nuclear weapons program. They have a nuclear arsenal of 200 bombs. They're not a signatory on the NPT. Israel's the only country with a nuclear arsenal, and they're Iran's sworn enemy. Let's also talk about the history. The United States overthrew the...
Sure, but why would they need... So Israel doesn't threaten Iran. You see, the reason why Iran can't, from Israel's perspective, can't obtain nuclear weapons is because their stated aim is to destroy Israel. The complete destruction of Israel. Israel's never threatened to destroy Iran. Israel supports a regime change now because they want a regime that, like prior to 79, were friendly to Israel. So they want friendship with Iran. They don't want to destroy it. Whereas Iran's stated aim is we want to destroy Israel. So if your entire aim, in fact, they've crashed their state into the ground trying to chase this dream because you've got to remember it's actually it's backed by the ideology. It's driven by the Islamist ideology. You can't pretend that doesn't exist. The Islamist ideology believes that Jews should not be in the Holy Land. So they need to wipe Israel off the map. So here you have one state that is his stated aim, and everything it's done is driven by that aim, and they're willing to suffer any consequences trying to achieve that, including all the economic sanctions that they've received, the wars that they've gone to, the funding of all the different proxy groups. They're willing to do everything and destroy their own country just to achieve that stated aim of destroying Israel. So of course they shouldn't be allowed to obtain a weapon. On the other hand, you're comparing them to Israel that has nuclear weapons and has never threatened to destroy any other state.
Government of Iran in 1953. A democratically elected prime minister wanted to nationalize Iran's resources and put Iran first. He was overthrown by the CIA. The United States installed a brutal dictatorship. The Iranian people revolted against it. Ever since, the United States and Israel have been at war with Iran, and we've destroyed all their neighbors. We went into Iraq and overthrew Saddam Hussein.
So that's like, I'm not even going to get into the Iranian history. I'm not an Iranian history expert, but if you actually go and watch any documentary, go do the research. Right now, the way he's presenting it is like the communist version of that narrative. That is not the history of Iran. Iran has a deep, long, the Shah's dynasty is 2,500 years within Iran. So claiming that it was this very simplistic version of what happened is completely untrue. It's just like an anti-American version. This is the anti-American narrative of Iran's history, and it's insane. And that's exactly why it's the woke right. Because again, they're doing exactly what the woke left do. It's finding everyone else's version of the history, they're rewriting history to be anti-American, to blame everything on America.
I don't mean to interrupt you. I just said 5 minutes. It could have been 10 minutes. You guys are both smart to talk for hours. So at this point, just let Dinesh come back and counter that. And then you guys this is a real debate. You guys can have a free-for-all. So I'll just pitch you back to this, Dinesh. You can leave off where you were stopping there. Nick Fuentes, go ahead.
Yeah, terrific. I mean, Alex, I think you only jump in if we are interrupting too much and can't make our points, or either hogging all the time. And I think otherwise, I'm happy to just go back and forth. I'd like to just address a few of these points, and we can kind of get into it further. So I'll start by kind of correcting a couple of points that I think are just fallacious. The first one is the idea that the Soviet Union was said to be some kind of a maniacal, nihilistic power. No one ever said that. Not only that, but the whole premise of mutually assured destruction, or MAD, was based upon the idea that you have two completely rational adversaries, and each of them understand that the deployment of nuclear weapons, the one against the other, will meet with catastrophic retaliation. Never once did we dream that Khrushchev was like a suicide bomber, or Brezhnev, or Andropov, or Chernenko, or any of the Soviet leaders going back to Lenin. We knew that they valued their lives. We saw them as protecting their own interests. So the idea that there's some kind of we've heard all this before with Russia and China, that's not true. The idea of negotiating with the Soviet Union was the liberal idea. It was the idea that when you make treaties, people behave themselves. And I think Reagan exposed that to be fundamentally stupid. It misses what human nature is all about. It misses the lessons of Machiavelli and Clausewitz and Sun Tzu. It misses the idea that treaties are simply disguised ways that powerful countries advance their own interests. No one is going to sit down and make a treaty because they want to. You make treaties because you have to. You make treaties, by and large, in which you concede things that you would have lost anyway on the battlefield. Now, let's look at Iran, for example. If it's true, first of all, a word about Mossadegh. I heard Nick use the word democratically elected. Mossadegh was not democratically elected. He was not elected by the Iranian people. He was, in fact, appointed by the Shah. Let's remember that the Shah was in power in 1953. So if you have a dictator who's running the country, how does someone get democratically elected? So I think this is actually taking up a talking point from the left, and a bogus talking point also. By the way, the first thing that Mossadegh did when he came in, he dissolved parliament. So this democratically elected guy dissolves the very parliament that supposedly put him into power. So he was an autocrat, in some ways no different than the Shah. There was a power struggle. Yes, the CIA was involved. Mossadegh was overthrown. In my view, that was a very good thing. Now, some people will say, well, that's what caused the Iranian Revolution. Wrong. The Mossadegh business was in 1953. The Iranian Revolution was in 1979. Are you telling me that the Iranians were really mad, but they decided to go on a 25-year vacation and then decided, okay, now let's work ourselves up into a frenzy 25 years later? The reason we got Iran is basically because of Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter decided that the Shah was a despot. He didn't want to support the secret police. He pulled the Persian rug out from the Shah, and basically we got Khomeini. So this is the nincompoopery of Jimmy Carter. He tried to get rid of what he saw as the bad guy, and we got the worst guy.
Okay,
and
so Nick, respond to that, but I don't.
It's so good. Dinesh this is the thing. There's not many debates, and I wasn't expecting it from him, to be honest. When I watched this essay, and that's why I wasn't really going to watch it with you guys. But that on top of the fact that we have tonight off because of Rukshan traveling, I thought, I want people to see it, because forget about, there's a Groyper army, and of course, we've talked about this over and over. You have the woke right, the woke left. You have, 2 billion Muslims around the world, 2.5 billion Muslims against this tiny nation of 10, or if you look at all Jews around the world, 15 million people. So there is a large group of people online from all those groups that are rooting for Nick Fuentes, and no matter how the argument plays out, how the debate plays out, they're going to say Nick won. But if you actually just listen to those two arguments, like I don't think he could have done any better in dismantling everything Nick Fuentes opened up with. So I think it's important to understand, why is Nick Fuentes making the arguments of the left, of the anti-American position, the Soviet position, the Iranian Islamist position? Why is he making those? Why is he telling history in such an anti-American way?
We're going to jump in a bunch. This is a great debate, but we're kind of doing a history lesson, debating history. Go as long as you guys.
I know it's kind of irrelevant. I'll give Alex Jones credit for that, because let's get to today. Let's quickly just read a super chat. Thank you, Baz. Welcome back to the super chats. Good to see you tonight. I know we're early. Are you going on 2C's New Media Summit next month with Andy? No. Carl Benjamin, I will donate to send you dollars. I'll take a look at it, to be honest. I think it's probably in the UK. I do have a trip to the UK scheduled, but not for next month. And I try to avoid the UK, but maybe shoot me through I'll talk to the guys there and look at what exactly it is. I know you mentioned it the last live stream, so I appreciate you. It seems like you really want me to go to it. I'll take a look at it, but I'm not planning at this point to go, but we'll see. Appreciate the super chat. Let's keep going.
We go 3 hours if you want. I hope we get into the current stuff, the FATWA, Trump saying they may have a peace deal Monday, the Israel lobby, all of that. But I'm going to stop there. Nick, come back. You guys start going back and forth there.
Sure, I would come back and, I don't want to turn it into a big history thing about the Soviet Union and communism, but I would say that's simply not true. I mean, it was credible, and this is what the Pentagon...
Well, he didn't want to make it into that, but he made it into that in his opening statement. Why did you open with that? Because you want to paint a certain picture about the Iran narrative.
I believed in the late 60s and early 70s is that the Soviets thought that they could survive a first strike against the United States. The idea that mutually assured destruction was always the law of the land. There's this revolution in diplomacy because of nukes. It's just belied by doctrine. And during the 60s and 70s, we believed the Soviets are more powerful than us. They had more nukes than us. And we thought that they were going to strike us first. They thought they could survive it. And the rhetoric about the Soviets was the same. They have this global ambition, domino theory. They want a global revolution. It was the exact same stuff that they say about Iran. And yet we never invaded the Soviet Union. We didn't need regime change in the Soviet Union and to go in and decapitate the regime with airstrikes. It just isn't true. We negotiated. So I would say that's in the first place, but we don't need to relitigate the history of the Cold War. And the second place of Mossadegh is really neither here nor there, the exact particularities here. The point is this. The United States and Israel pursue regime change across the entire region. That's the point I'm trying to make, and I didn't get to finish in my opening statement. We overthrew Iran's government once, and you admit it's a CIA coup in 53. In 1979, the people are furious because of the secret police, because of the White Revolution, because of the reforms that were made under the Shah. They overthrow the Shah's government, the Western-backed government, because they saw it as a puppet. And the Islamic Revolution enjoyed broad support in Iranian society. What took place ever since then is regime change, one regime change operation after another. Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Egypt, Syria, you name it, whether it's the Arab Spring and it's these soft power color revolution coups or it's ground wars or it's civil wars. That's the business we do. And we do it no matter who it is. We do it against secular dictators. We do it against people that cooperate with us and those that don't. Gaddafi gave up his nuclear weapons in 2003. We backed airstrikes against him anyway in 2011. We backed Saddam at one point. We oversaw the dismantlement of his nuclear program. We went to war against him in 2003. We said we weren't going to war against Assad in Syria. We did. He's now overthrown, and now you have ISIS in power. This is the history of the Middle East. And this gets to the reason of why Iran wants a nuclear weapon. It's not because they want to kill everybody. It's not because they're fanatical and we can't negotiate and they're trying to bring about the end times and the eschaton. It's because they want to deter the same fate, regime change, would happen to all of their neighbors. That makes them rational.
Okay, let me stop you. I said I would interrupt. You guys are both too polite. Every 2 or 3 minutes, I'm going to make you pause. That goes back to what Dinesh was just saying earlier. He's like, when North Korea has nukes, we say, sir, which I get that, and I don't want them having nukes. They do, and ballistic missiles hit us. But that then begs the question, Iran, if we can hedge and maybe have some hidden, then that speaks to why they would want a nuke. I mean, there's a lot to say here, but go ahead.
But why would they? No one would want regime change in Iran if they weren't acting the way they were acting. The only reason why America and especially Israel want regime change in Iran is because they do pose a real threat to Israel. They keep they essentially. They, on a daily basis, promote the idea in every single sermon from the Ayatollah, when they run massive rallies. Everything they do is in pursuit of this aim, this goal to wipe Israel off the map. So the only reason why anyone wants regime, so if you're saying they're hedging so that they could stop regime change, well, they don't actually have. All they have to do is stop pushing to annihilate, stop the rhetoric and stop the behaviour, and stop inciting their population in this stated aim of wanting to wipe Israel off the map, or their anti. Again, it's not even just Israel. This is from Israel's perspective, but it's also America. Remember, I know they get into it, but it's the big Satan, the little Satan. It's about the West. They hate the West. So it's the idea that it's only they want to hedge to have nuclear weapons to stop the West from being able to do what they did in the regime changes that they did in other states is insane. It's untrue. There would be no threat of regime change if they just didn't behave like anti-Western nutcases that wanted to destroy us.
Yeah, one of the mullahs, right in the middle of all this, one of the key mullahs made a very key admission. He said, this is not about Iran. This is about Islam. Right there, you get the heart of the matter. These mullahs, and yes, there was a broad-based Iranian revolution, but the mullahs in that power struggle took power. And they have ruled dictatorially over Iran now since 1979. They've made the Iranian revolution semi-permanent. But the key to understanding that revolution, going all the way back from when they seized the American hostages to the strike on Beirut.
They hate the West because of the sanctions. Lift the sanctions and Iran will be a superpower of the Middle East, and everyone knows it. That is the dumbest comment I've seen so far. There's been some pretty dumb comments. And it's Mac economics. You're actually retarded. Why are there sanctions against Iran? Was it because they were so friendly to the West because they had sanctions? After the Islamic Revolution, their stated aim was against the West. So the sanctions were imposed on them to basically deal with that. So if you think suddenly showing weakness, and if you call yourself, if somebody who's making that argument cannot call themselves, cannot say they ever believed in Trump's message. Trump's message has always been peace through strength, not peace through weakness. So suddenly backing off and giving Iran everything they want is not going to make them love you. That's like a battered woman going back to cop another beating, but coming back and saying how much she'll capitulate and do whatever he wants, and in the hope that her husband will stop beating her up. It's not the reality. That is not the reason why they hate the West. They hate the West because that's the ideology they follow.
Route 1982 to the fact that Iran has been sponsoring terrorism, not just in the region. They have tentacles in Venezuela. They have tentacles in South America. They have cells in the United States. They are making an alliance with Russia and China to create a kind of axis of power. So to the degree, Nick, that you're saying that this is, a global chessboard, I agree. And I think that, in a way, puts an interesting question for us, which is that isn't it a fact that there is a jihadi or radical strain of Islam? This ultimately is what is driving a lot of these radical Muslims. Right? They are Hezbollah, Hamas. It doesn't matter whether they're Shia or Sunni. Hamas is Sunni. Why is Iran funding Hamas? Because they don't care about those distinctions at the end of the day. At the end of the day, they care about whether you're an infidel, yes or no. This radical Islam is a global ideology. Look, you can say the mullahs keep saying it. I don't believe it, but you should believe it.
Exactly.
When the Russians said that they wanted a global triumph of communism, they meant it. We took it seriously. And by the way, we didn't end the Soviet Union through some sort of a treaty. We ended the Soviet Union by bankrupting them. Reagan ultimately defeated them in the Cold War. It was not a treaty. It was they were out of gas. They couldn't compete in an arms race. We were building MX missiles and putting multiple warheads on them. We were building a missile shield. We were supporting guerrilla revolutions around the world. That's ultimately, Afghanistan became, by their own admission, a bleeding wound. So this is why the Soviets gave in. They didn't give in. No country ever gives in because of a treaty. The idea that communism abolished itself, Eastern Europe was freed because we put a piece of paper in front of them and went, oh, okay, let's get rid of all of this stuff. Yes. We were once a global empire. We'll now become a second-rate superpower. That's not how it happened at all. And that's a misunderstanding of Iran. Islam is a conquering force. The Muslims came out of the Arabian desert. How do you think they conquered the Holy Land? They took Jerusalem. They took Syria. They took Jordan. They conquered Iran by force. That's how they got it. They are the occupier of Iran.
Okay, Dinesh, and by the way, you're both very smart men. I've studied the history. You're both, accurate in the basic facts. Very interesting. A lot. I'm not saying the general public's dumb, but even
I get that, Alex. is enjoying the fact that they're both willing to come in and debate, and it's actually decent the fact that they're not. It's not like a Piers Morgan show where they're just screaming over each other. That's why I was surprisingly impressed yesterday when I was actually watching it. But it's so funny, and Dinesh just articulates it so perfectly. The idea that you think, like, it's okay to all of you out there that hate Israel with a passion, and there are a lot of you out there, especially on the internet. It doesn't mean, like, good on you, hate Israel all you want. But if you think siding with these guys and letting Iran obtain nuclear weapons, letting an Islamist ideology, a regime that basically wants to conquer the world, that is their ideology. If you don't understand the ideology, go and learn it. Go read up on it. Go and try to understand it. But just because you hate Israel doesn't mean you should get in bed with people who one day will conquer where you are. Because look at the history. They started in the Arabian Peninsula and they did end up conquering almost the entire Middle East. The reason why they hate Israel so much is because that is the one part of the Middle East that has not been now. It was conquered, you had the Ottoman Empire. That was when it was a caliphate. But since then, it was a British mandate, and then now back to Jewish hands. That's why they hate it so much. They want it back for the Islamic under Islam. So all of you who are siding with this ideology and excusing it because you hate Israel, just remember, because one day it's coming here as well. It's their mission is the entire world.
Really smart political people, really, most of them can't find around on a map. So I don't want to throw this in. I figured, very smart, Dinesh, trying to throw the debate away here, but very smart to get into America versus Iran up front. I was imagining, and I'm not trying to steer this, though I want to spend some time on it, the whole issue of Israel and the Israel lobby and where that sits, because I know that's Nick's bailiwick. And, so that's just something I'm throwing out there as well, because that's why a lot of Americans have seen, I'm not saying I love the Islamists or any of this, but we've seen regime change. Now, the former head of Al-Qaeda in charge of Syria, we see, Hamas being Israel.
To Alex Jones's credit, like he's audience captured. He was defending Israel in the beginning of this war, but if you look at his history, he goes back, he flip-flops. He's audience captured. So whatever the audience goes, he kind of has to go that way. But one thing that he does realize is that befriending Islamists is suicide. So he doesn't do what Nick Fuentes does. He doesn't do what a lot of the other ones do, where they align themselves with Islamists. They might say they don't, but they end up doing it. They end up rewriting, and that's not true. Like him saying, you guys know history really well. Nothing you said is inaccurate. Well, one of you have to be lying about the history, and I'm going with the one that's using the anti-American version of history because they have to lie to justify their behavior now. So it's not. So Alex Jones is between a rock and a hard place. He has to, for his audience, be anti-Israel now, but he knows that the jihadis are not his friends. So, but yeah, they can't both be right.
Well, set it up. As a counterbalance. Then we've got Iran. All of this, and so I think a lot of Americans just don't believe the intelligence establishment. Even though I wouldn't cry at night if the mullahs fell. So what about the AIPAC Israel issue in all of this, Dinesh? For like a minute.
Well, can I respond actually to what he said?
I'm sorry. I apologize. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. I just want to have equal time. But I mean, with regard to this, there is just like this, and forgive me if this sounds. I'm trying to be cordial here, but
you said earlier that Israel never threatens their neighbors. Didn't Bibi say that if you take out Saddam Hussein, there'll be positive reverberations in the region? Didn't he also say they're WMDs? The WMDs came from British and American intelligence. So that wasn't, I don't think, it wasn't an Israeli thing. But yes, Bibi definitely said that. And fine, he may have been wrong. Like Iran and Iraq are not the same thing. He may have been wrong back then. It was definitely in Israel's interest. If you remember in the Gulf War, they were firing rockets at Israel as well. But the idea that, I don't know what you're trying to say. Didn't Bibi say? Yeah, he did say it'd have positive reverberations in the region, and I think with Iraq they were wrong just because of the way they went about it. Like Saddam Hussein wasn't a good guy; he was a horrible person. But I think the whole what are you trying to say? You said earlier that Israel never threatened their neighbors. So what? How is that Israel threatening their neighbors? So is the fact that Bibi saying that Saddam Hussein say that if you take out, so you're saying that was Israel threatening their neighbors? Is Bibi saying that taking out Saddam Hussein when he would? So you're talking about his speech at the UN, I think it was, or was it to Congress, where he was basically saying if you get rid of Saddam Hussein, and I don't think he was prime minister then, if I'm right, because I don't think he was prime minister, but he was saying that if you take out Saddam Hussein, which is true, there'll be positive reverberations. How is that threatening their neighbors? If they were threatening their neighbors, he would say he was just giving his opinion like I am now, but he was giving it, I think it was to Congress at the time. That's not a threat. How's that a threat? Anyways, I don't know, maybe explain to me.
I do believe there is this engine in the United States from the conservative movement that says it is about Islam. You know, this is Glenn Beck's book. This is sort of the Fox News mantra. It is Islam. Islam is the problem. And I'm not an Islamist. I'm a Catholic. I'm not pro-Islam. And I wouldn't even call myself pro-Iran. I'm pro-America. And to sort of narrow the discussion, let's talk about Islamism.
Congress,
let's talk about jihadism. I agree with you. There is an element of jihadism in the Middle East. There are these radical Muslims that they want to return to the faith of the pious ones, the ancient Muslims, the first 2 or 3 generations of Muslims. They come from Saudi Arabia. Hezbollah, Hamas, the Iranian-backed groups do not attack Americans on American soil. They're not global.
Yeah, so if it was in 2002, he was a private citizen. It was just him giving evidence in Congress, and all you people jumping up and down about that. It's like, have you gone through all the evidence from everyone back then? It's people's opinion. Like it doesn't mean anything. That was his view at the time. If you get rid of Saddam Hussein, there'll be peace around the Middle East. Obviously, it shows that he was wrong back then about Saddam Hussein, about just getting rid of Saddam Hussein. The problem was trying to import the democracy to a Middle Eastern Arab country that just, it doesn't work. We saw what an epic failure that was. But nobody's calling for the same thing here. It's just not the same thing. Talking about helping the people of Iran rise up without boots on the ground, to have the revolution that they were actually, like if you look at the 79 revolution, they wanted freedom. They were fighting against tyranny. And all that happened is that the most powerful force at the time were the Islamists, and they took control and ended up being far more brutal than the Shah that they fought. So anyways, whatever.
Powers, they're local powers, they're regional powers. They don't attack the United States. They may attack the United States in Beirut or Iraq because the United States is in their territory. We're in the Middle East. We're in their neighborhood. We're backing Israel's brutal war on Lebanon in the 80s, where they commit massacres, castrating people, scalping people, brutal atrocities that are well documented that Israel, their own commission blames Ariel Sharon for this, the defense minister. So, they don't attack us on our soil. The terrorists that do attack us are Wahhabist. They're Salafist. That comes from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia spent billions of dollars promoting Wahhabism, which is the ideology of Al-Qaeda, of ISIS. We backed the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. We backed bin Laden. We do arms deals with Saudi Arabia. And you know what? To some extent, this radicalism is going away. And it came from Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, these other places. And it's going away because we made a deal with Mohammed bin Salman. We did arms deals throughout. We're allies throughout, buy oil from them throughout. We didn't invade Saudi Arabia and install a Western liberal democracy. We don't like your regime. We're going to drop bombs on you. We negotiated with them over time. And by the way, they were the biggest problem. As far as Iran is concerned, it's important to analytically determine their strategic interest, because that's how you determine what we have to do about it. Israel wants regime change in Iran. That's why Iran wants a bomb to deter this, which is a credible fear. Now, the United States won't let Iran have the bomb. Now, if you want to give Iran the Soviet Union treatment and bankrupt them through maximum pressure and sanctions, that's what we were doing. But you're calling for regime change. We didn't do regime change in the Soviet Union. We allowed them, and we went in there, actually. George Bush managed it, I think, in a good way. We managed a peaceful transition of power after a long period of soft power and smart power that we used against them. You're saying we need to go in and invade Iran, or not maybe invade Iran, but force them to have regime change with CIA operations.
No one's saying that. He's just making stuff up. And he's picking, like, I like how they pick certain points in the context of the Middle East in history, and it just suits their narrative, and then ignore the bigger picture, ignore the context of the time.
Foreign media, maximum pressure sanctions, backing Israeli operations. And I would say that's not in America's interest. That's what Israel wants. That's not what we want. Regime change has a terrible track record from Libya, Egypt, Iraq, Syria. There's 0 success stories. I think that I agree with you in some sense. We don't want a nuclear Iran, but we need to understand why we're on the threshold of one, and that has to do with Israel's ambitious and aggressive actions. In my opinion, the move is restrain Israel, stop them from attacking Iran, get Iran to come back to the table, and try to get them to agree to some kind of framework like the JCPOA. And maybe we could talk about the JCPOA, because to me, that is the most important.
They're on the threshold of a nuclear weapon that he says they're on, because in the beginning, didn't he argue something completely different? So they're on the threshold of a nuclear weapon, but it's Israel's fault they're on the threshold of a nuclear weapon because Israel's threatening regime change because Israel's sick of being threatened. Why don't you just encourage Iran to stop threatening, and then they don't need to be on the threshold of a nuclear weapon? But you believe that they shouldn't. You don't think that they should be. You don't want them to be nuclear armed, but you can see that they're on the threshold of a nuclear weapon. Like, none of it makes sense. He pushes and pulls his argument each and every way because at the end of the day, he just doesn't like Israel. That's all it is. He doesn't like Iran, but it's far lower. Like, the Muslims are way lower on his list because the woke right have bizarrely in the last few years suddenly at least tolerated the Muslims because the Islamists, because the thing that they have in common is the hate for Jews.
No, you're welcome to. I am trying to equal time. I was throwing a quick question back to Dinesh to give you a longer response because I'm glad we're having this debate. I just figured it would be about the current situation. I love the history, but we're kind of still in that, and I'm glad you guys are so informed and trying to educate people. But just in general, you guys go wherever you want, counter back what he was saying, Dinesh. But then I would like to just interject the current crisis. Where do you see it going? The Fatwa, Trump saying, "I'm going to kill." You're lucky I don't kill you. I might kill you, the Iranian leader, which I support Trump and love him. But that was provocative. I mean, and also ask you guys where you think this is going, and is there a path for peace? And then a larger debate, which I figured you guys would get into first, about the Israel lobby.
All right, let me say some things about regime change to lay a foundation of what I think the MAGA view on this is. Because I think the MAGA view on this is a repudiation of Bush, but it's not a repudiation of Reagan. In fact, it's a
Yes, Mr. Economics, you say something true. For one, Sunni Islamists hate Jews and Iran. True. And Shia Islamists hate Sunnis and Jews. So the one thing that they're united on is their hate for Jews. That's why you see Iran funding Hamas. Hamas is a Sunni terrorist organization. Hezbollah and the Houthis, I think the Houthis are also Shia. But Hamas is Sunni. The only thing that they have in common is the destruction of Israel, the hate for Jews.
Statement of the Reagan...
And Christians, by the way. And Christians. They all hate Christians. But shh, don't tell Nick Fuentes that.
Principles, although admittedly in a very different situation. Obviously, in the 70s and 80s, the Reagan focus was on the Soviet Empire. The situation now is totally different. But there are a lot of really bad regimes in the world. And these are regimes that harm our interests in all kinds of ways. So ask a simple question. Is it in our interest for these really bad regimes, and I'll be happy to go through a list and we can agree on what they are, would it be a good idea for these regimes to have change? For the bad guys who are running these regimes to get away, for the regimes themselves to be toppled, and for something else to take their place. So if we look at Iran, for example, I would say, I am willing to take any chance on getting rid of the mullahs, these jihadi mullahs, these people who wish death to us and are building up the means to do it. Oh, and I don't know, okay, maybe Nick's right. Maybe he's wrong. I tend to believe the mullahs over Nick. They say that they want to have global jihad. They say that they want a global caliphate. They say that they're building up the strength to do it. They're allying with other people who certainly do have nuclear weapons and do have that kind of power. So would it be a good idea to have regime change in Iran? Would it be in our interest? Forget about Israel. Of course it would. Now, a separate question is, what are we willing to expend for that to happen? So my question to Nick is, all right, let's start at the very beginning. Would you be willing to expend 50 cents to get the mullahs to leave, to quit, to go home, to become refugees and go to other countries? They can go to luxury apartments in Qatar and elsewhere, and let the Iranian people have a plebiscite. We're not going to go in there. We're not going to arrange tribal meetings. We're not going to take over the country. We're going to let them fix it. I would be very confident that what comes after, whatever it is, it could be autocracy, it could be democracy, it could be some hybrid, is going to be better than what's there now. So I think Nick is so blinded by his hatred of Israel.
Why did you spit on Christians in Israel? They seem to hate us, eh? Go to Israel. Wear a big cross. Show me one person spitting on you. Yes, there are individual nutcases in Israel that should be condemned and are condemned widely in Israel. But the idea that in Israel Christians are not free and safe and share is complete nonsense. Tell me you've never been to Israel without telling me you haven't been to Israel if that's what you think is the truth in Israel. Israel is the only place in the Middle East that since 1948 the Christian population has grown. The only place in the Middle East. It's because they're safe there. My officer in the army was a Christian Arab. Nobody walks around spitting on Christians. Those one or two videos you've seen is just like any one or two racists that you see acting out in Australia against any other group. Yes, Israel has racists there. The community love Christians, but don't let the truth get in the way of your little, Israel-hating worldview.
Israel, that he's losing sight of America first. He's become automatically friendly to the mullah, so he's giving them a much more rational account of the Iranian interest than he even gives of American interest. I mean, every time he talks about America, he uses the phrase we. But let's remember that we've had alternating regimes between Republicans and Democrats. So he mentioned the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring was basically an anti-American operation organized with the help of Barack Obama. Barack Obama wants Iran to have nukes. He was trying to create space for them to do that and give them money to enable them to do that. Why? Because Obama has an ideology that's anti-American. So we can't just say we and take the blame for what Obama did and what other
Dinesh,
people
I'm
did.
just watching the clock, trying to just be a referee here. Good points. Nick?
I don't know if it's true that Obama wanted them to get nukes, but I think that we got to where we are today because of his policies. I'm not necessarily sure about Dinesh's argument there that Obama was trying to help him to achieve that goal. I just think personally that he was naive and he wasn't friendly. He was doing a lot of what Nick's doing, giving the Ayatollahs, giving Iran a lot more credit. He's sympathizing to their position, even if it goes directly against what they said, what they say publicly to everyone on every single day, like making out that they're far more rational than they are. Couple of super chats. Thank you for the super chats, guys. Professing to be a Christian does not make you a Christian. Fuentes saying he's a Catholic checks out. Catholics 100% overrepresent in the woke right. The ones who screech Christ is king in Jews' faces. Yeah, I see that a lot. You know, it is a lot. You know, all the Christians that I meet, like genuine Christians I meet on a day-to-day basis out there in the real world, not online, because they don't run around just going Christ is king when they meet me, are the nicest, sweetest people. And yeah, some of them are, they're so deep in their faith that they really want to bring me out of love to their faith, and I love it. I don't believe in it. Obviously, I don't even really practice Judaism. I've gone through this a million times. Culturally a Jew. I'm a proud Jew because I respect what my history, my people's history, and what people have bled and died just to protect our tiny minority. But the people on the internet, and there's a lot of this, the people that, there's this whole group that just turned to, they baptize and become Catholics, and suddenly they, change. It's like the woke right, if you want to know how to spot them on something like X, they're just like the woke left that have in their bio the pronouns and the trans flag and the gay flag, whatever, the pride flag. The woke right will have a cross and Christ is king. And it doesn't mean that believing Christ is king makes you woke right. That's not true. But using it as a political tool is usually a sign of, it's kind of your virtue signaling, just like the woke left do with their pronouns and that. But yeah, a few people have mentioned that there are certain, I understand, like churches within the, like, almost denominations within the Catholic Church. They're not denominations, but there's certain parts of the Catholic Church that clearly don't really like Jews much. And a lot of these new converts, like Candace Owens, I understand, like the church that she goes to, all of those ones that baptize people tend to have more of those anti-Jewish leanings. When they chant death to Israel, death to America, death to the West, I'm inclined to take them at their word. YouTube is censoring me again. Baz, thank you so much again for your super chat. Really appreciate them. Yeah, and that's exactly, you know what? The Jews have learnt over time that when somebody tells you that they hate you and they want you dead, believe them. And this is something that the West is probably, people like Nick Fuentes, like if they get their way and convince the masses not to take them at their word, they're only good people in the West. The people that follow him are only going to wake up when it's too late. They're going to wake up and realize, crap, I should have listened to these Islamists who told me that they hate me and they want me dead. And they want to convert everyone to our radical version of Islam, force it on everyone. I should have listened to them. But instead, I'll listen to Nick Fuentes in his studio, safe and sound, who's never seen a day in combat and doesn't have a wife and kids. So literally has nothing to lose, everything to gain, to essentially grab as much attention as he can so that he can get views, and it doesn't affect him.
Well, that's a lot to tackle there.
And he's got no kids, so it's not going to affect his next generation. By the looks of things, Nick Fuentes is never going to have kids, so he's got nothing to lose, absolutely nothing, and everything to gain.
Say in the first place, and I have to address this first just to get it out of the way. When you say we take the mullahs at their word, you're citing a obscure one of their clerical leaders, and you say, well, that guy said it's about Islam. That defines their whole regime. If you want to take them at their word, let's go to the supreme leader. The supreme leader is the top cleric in Iran, the top cleric in Shiite Islam. It's in their constitution. Supreme leader's got to be a cleric. The Ayatollah promulgated a fatwa 20 years ago that says that attaining nuclear weapons and using them is against Islamic law. And that has been cited over and over again in 2005, in 2015. In recent negotiations, they say the supreme leader says it's contrary, and I can give you the quotes, completely to Islamic doctrine to have nuclear weapons. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say we're going to take them at their word when one guy in the government says we're going to take over the world, but you can't have it both ways and say we can't listen to the supreme leader say we don't want nuclear.
Isn't it weird that you can't have it both ways? But he says that they're nuclear hedging, or whatever it's called. So they're trying to threaten us with nuclear capability, saying that we're going to build up so that we can do it, but while telling us that we have a fatwa against it, so we can never have nuclear weapons. He makes just the argument that he makes. You could throw back at him. It's exactly the same thing. If you can't have it both ways, then you also can't have it both ways. And they shouldn't be enriching uranium. Why are they enriching uranium to be able to for weapon grades uranium? Why do they need that if there's a fatwa against it?
Weapons. We have to do one or the other. I'll just say that first. Then we get further and we get into this question.
Nick, may I ask you a question about that?
Well,
I think
okay, sure. Yeah,
okay,
we'll
go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, well, so, and then with regard to regime change, I would contend that regime change is just not desirable. You say, well, how much are you willing to expend to pursue regime change? I'm saying I don't think it's desirable. And here's the evidence for this. You say, well, I'm confident something better will happen. There'll be this democratic plebiscite. What is the history of regime change? When Hosni Mubarak was overthrown in Egypt, you got the Muslim Brotherhood, Islamism, Mohammed Morsi. Sure. When Gaddafi was overthrown, you get warlords, you get civil war. When Syria was overthrown, you get ISIS. You get this guy al-Julani, who's literally from ISIS and Al-Qaeda. In Afghanistan, you still have the Taliban. If we overthrow Iran, and by the way, here's the other evidence.
But again, the difference is here. Well, firstly, if there's any similarity, it's only Afghanistan, because it's a jihadi regime already. In all the other examples, it was a regime change from secular that became jihadi. But what worse regime can you have than Iran? One that's chanting and calling, like he's saying it's one obscure cleric, when it's literally the state position is to death to America, big Satan, little Satan, death to Israel. So it's not just one cleric. They literally the state runs rallies where this is like it's all over the internet. You could see it's not like one person just made these claims. So what regime can you have that's worse than the oppressive Islamist regime in Iran? You can't possibly have a worse regime. Now, I agree, boots on the ground trying to for the objective of regime change is stupid. Like, nobody's actually calling for that. And in all the examples that he gave us, that's exactly what we were talking about, is having boots on the ground for that regime change. So whether it was Afghanistan, Iraq, in those cases, and even Syria to a degree, and like, no one's calling for that. It's calling the support that Americans or Israel is giving is to and this is the other difference within Iran, is the fact that it's estimated about 80% of the population are against the regime. So it's empowering, and they're secular. So it's empowering those Persians to take their country back. The same people who fought, the majority of the people that fought for the Islamic revolution in '79, but They were fighting against the Shah back then, but got something worse. For those people to stand up again, but this time, hopefully achieve a better outcome. It can't be worse. What's going to be worse? Another Islamist regime?
Israel attacked Iran 2 weeks ago. They thought that the government would collapse and the people would rise up and they would overthrow the government. This is what they said for years. The opposite happened. The people rallied to the supreme leader. They said, we're under attack.
He's just making that up.
They actually rallied in the streets, and there were major funeral processions for the martyrs, the IRGC leaders that were killed. They rallied behind the government. If anything...
Okay, so anyone that actually... Go and look at it. The footage of any of the rallies in this Iranian war that you can only find because of the Iranian press TV that had, like, the Iranian state media has the control of that. You're talking about a country with, 90 million people. They were tiny events, state events. So state-run events. You can find bigger state events here in Melbourne. No one rallied around the flag. It's a talking point of Islamists and anti-Western positions is that everybody's rallying around the flag. No one rallied around the flag. There were, in fact, a lot of Iranians. This was like a weird situation where a lot of Iranians were actually telling Israel and America to go harder. So he just says it confidently, and he said, he speaks well, Nick, but it's just complete nonsense. It's not based in any fact.
If this government goes down, I don't know where you think we're going to get something better. We're going to get something more hardcore. The reason why it matters to articulate Iran's interest is to say, if their worst fear is regime change, which is the credible fear of all leaders, every leader wants to stay in power. No leader wants to meet the fate of Gaddafi. No leader wants to be deposed and live in exile. If their credible fear is regime change, and we pursue that in one form or another, and it's a little naive to say they're going to come together and have a new government, CIA and State Department and Israel will be all over that, just like they have in all these other operations. You're going to get hardliners. You're going to get IRGC commanders that said, our worst nightmare happened. Now we're really in a
There's literally, you can't get bigger hardliners than who's in charge now. It is a complete straw man bullshit argument that is not based in any truth or any fact. If the people rise up in Iran, as it seems that they're on the verge of doing, they're not going to allow a harder line regime to take it this time. They fell for that last time. But Nick can just say that based on what? Based on being in his little studio and not really knowing anything about how the Middle East works.
Apocalyptic war. Now we're really, this is the end times. The United States overthrew us.
Okay, so I'm against regime change. I'm going to watch the clock here.
Like Daisy said, I saw a lot of people in the comments saying, Daisy was saying Iran wasn't always this way. They had a lot of freedom, especially the women. Things went pear-shaped over there. So you're talking about in 79, praying for peace for all. I agree. And that's the thing. That's what America and Israel is supporting, is the people, to empower the people to rise up themselves and take down the Islamist regime. You think they're going to allow an even more hardline? I don't even know what that is. Like, how can you be more hardline than the current regime that basically, takes women's eyes out if they dare not wear the hijab right, or they're caught dancing on a social media app, like whatever. Like, what? How much more? They are essentially ISIS. They're the Shia version of ISIS that actually have a state that is being legitimized by idiots like Nick Fuentes.
Answer Dinesh's question, or just go back to Dinesh?
Was that what question?
I read the exact question. Dinesh, you had a question though?
Oh, well, I've forgotten what the question was.
There's a lot being talked about here.
I'd rather respond to this larger theme here a little bit, because look, I mean, Nick, you're 26, and so it's understandable that your view of history, you keep saying history, a regime change is about history, and the history you give is like 4 years old. Your compass is so narrow that you don't understand that I could give you 40 examples of regime change through history that have all worked out beautifully. Some recent, some more ancient. There was regime change in Spain. Franco fell. Spain became a democracy. You had autocrats all over South America. Those regimes all changed. Many of those countries are much better off as a result. The United States produced regime change in Mexico. There was a dictator named Santana.
What a Ben Shapiro wannabe. Who's a Ben Shapiro wannabe? Are you saying Dinesh is a Ben Shapiro wannabe? Like, if there's something Dinesh is saying that you disagree with, please put it in the comments. Forget about what, like, forget about calling him names like Ben Shapiro wannabe. If there's something you agree with Nick Fuentes saying in the substance of his arguments in response, or what Dinesh is responding to, put it in the comments. Tell me what the argument you think Dinesh is making that's wrong, because he is, Nick is super articulate, but he's actually getting smashed when it comes to substance by what he's saying here.
He was the one who actually came and fought against
Nick,
us in the Alamo
laugh out loud. Okay,
in
mate.
Texas. Ultimately,
Sorry.
Santana was overthrown. That was excellent regime change. I'm not even counting, of course, the Nazi regime in Japan in World War II. The Soviet Union was regime change of an excellent quality. So regime change sometimes works and sometimes it doesn't work. A lot of times it depends kind of on who does it and how. Now, here's a key point. And of
exactly.
course, Alex has brought up Israel. I want to get into Israel, so I'm happy to do that.
He's so right. It matters who, how. And the regime changes that he keeps referring to is like in the Middle East with boots on the ground. No one's calling for that. And the regime changes, when you go further back, there have obviously been successful regime changes.
And I want to make. It is very much...
Immune, what logic don't I know? Tell me the logic I don't know. So which part of my argument, like, I'm not even arguing here. Dinesh is making the arguments amazing. Like, I'm in awe of the way he's actually presenting it in comparison to Nick. I think Nick does an amazing job, a bit like Obama, again, like the left, in, presenting nothing. Speaking 5 minutes, complete nonsense, like absolutely using the talking points of Islamists or communists, and based on no real facts, in comparison to Dinesh, who's just literally spitting facts in response that Nick can't actually contend with.
In my view, in our interest and Israel, to have regime change in Iran. And if Israel is willing to do it, I would say more power to them. I think Trump is stopping them. Trump says, no, I'm going to save the life of Khamenei. And so Trump, in this sense, I think, is more allergic to the risks of regime change and willing to keep the mullahs in power. But what's really important here is Israel is not controlling Trump. It's the other way around. If you leave it to Netanyahu, you leave it to the Knesset, they would like to overthrow the mullahs and they have the power to do it. And the fact that they're not doing it shows that, again, to use my old phrase, the great Satan is controlling the little Satan and not the other way around. There's another example just from today. Trump is basically pressuring Netanyahu to have a 60-day ceasefire in Gaza. Now, first of all, Israel has every moral right to level Gaza. And what I mean by that is, quite honestly, when a country attacks you, when you are invaded, just like if there's a home invasion, some guy comes into my house, rapes my wife, kills my daughter, kills my kids, and then he runs away and I chase after him. And of course, I chase his car down, I stop him. He jumps out of the car, grabs his own kids and sticks them in front of him. And then he goes, don't shoot because women and children are in front of me. No, what you've done, you put your children in danger, first by invading my house, and second by using them as human shields. I am not under any moral strictures based on what you did to me. I have every right to attempt to destroy you, and the suffering of your women and children is the result of your actions and not mine. So my point is, once you had October 7th, and October 7th, by the way, bankrolled by Iran, planned in Iran, Israel has every right, strategic, moral, political, to strike out at Gaza and to strike at Iran. And so the United States is the one that's tying their hands. And so once again, even with this Gaza treaty, you can see that the man in charge, the numero uno, is not Netanyahu, it's Trump.
Okay, so I want Nick to be able to come back. I got to say something here. Dinesh, you're a great guy. I respect you, love your films, been every 20 years. But the analogy of somebody breaking your house, raping and killing your wife and daughter, then you chase him down so he uses his kids. They're still innocent. And look, I get it, 50,000 dead in Gaza, the whole liberal media making it the biggest thing ever. I'm sad it happened. The left loves the war in Ukraine, over 1 million dead. But, and I understand what we did to Germany in World War II, I know Israel's argument. But to say that if somebody uses their own kids as human shields, I don't know if somebody killed my wife and daughter, they use their kids as human shields, I'd wait till they drop the kids, or I'd, whatever. I just think it's an oversimplification.
Well, you wouldn't wait till they drop the kids. What you would look for a clean shot at them. But if you accidentally hit their kids, whose fault would it be? Yours or theirs?
Exactly.
I get your point. That's fair. Touche. So go ahead, Nick. I'll stop interrupting.
Yeah, well, I forgive me, but I have to do this. You said that I'm a young man and my view of history is so short. Well, let's talk about some of your history here. You were a big supporter of the war in Iraq, and I want to actually read and go back to what you said about it in 2003 and 2007, because I think this is fair. You said in 2003 that Saddam's support for terrorism, his attempt to acquire nuclear weapons, makes him an imminent danger to world peace and security. That was in 2003. 4 years later, you said the important point about the wars is that 50 million Afghans and Iraqis are free. And for the first time in their history, they can control their own destiny. Liberals emphasize the negative and relish the failures of American foreign policy. Now, there's a lot of other quotes here, but this speaks to the kind of hubris of the neocons, of the interventionists, of advocates for regime change, which is, just like in 2003, there's this alarmism. They support terrorism. They're building nuclear weapons. Now, both of those things turned out not to be true. There was no connection between Al-Qaeda and Saddam. Saddam did not have nukes. Then there's this justification after the fact. Well, it doesn't matter because it's going fine. Well, 20 years later, guess who took over Iraq? Iran. Iran filled the power vacuum. Guess who retook over Afghanistan? The Taliban. So, you can talk about like Germany and Japan. I think those things are fundamentally different. For starters, because Japan attacked us first on our soil in Hawaii. I mean, that's fundamentally different. But in terms of regime change, this does harken back to Iraq. And I've seen your videos where you talk about the dissimilarities between the two situations. I think they're very similar. Now, as far as Iran, I don't even want to get into Gaza because that's a little bit, we can later, but I want to talk specifically about Iran. In one of your videos, you say, well, unlike Iraq, where we had to rely on government intelligence, with Iran, we know about their facilities. We know where they are. We've seen the tunnels. We've seen the centrifuges. We know what they're doing. Well, isn't that sort of precisely the point? When the United States made the nuclear deal with Iran, they adhered to it for years. The deal was made in 2015, and from 2015 to 2018, the IAEA said they were in compliance with the deal. They had 24-hour monitoring, they had cameras, they had inspections, and they were in compliance with the deal. It wasn't until a year after Trump pulled out of the deal and forced all the other Europeans to pull out as well, and we reneged on our commitments. We pulled out and didn't give them sanctions relief. We, through secondary sanctions, forced the Europeans to pull out, and they didn't get sanctions relief. It was only until 2019 that Iran started to gradually renege on their commitments. And it went in succession where America killed Qasem Soleimani, which is one of their generals. Then Iran began to enrich without limitations. They enriched and they engaged in all nuclear activities without any kind of restrictions. It wasn't until 2021 when Israel attacked Natanz twice, cyber attacks and sabotage attacks, that Iran began to enrich to 60%. Every action has this equal and opposite reaction. Iran was a partner in 2001. Iran helped us build the Northern Alliance.
Imagine working so hard to defend Iran, use all their talking points, and then claim you're America first. Like, the framing of all this entire story and every single thing, every single event is straight out of the Iranian book. But he's America first, apparently.
They helped us put...
That's, you know what? He just... All these people they're Israel last. So if Israel benefits at all from it, then they will take the opposing position, even if it's against Americans' interests. That's the problem with these people.
Karzai in power in Afghanistan. A few months later, George Bush calls them the axis of evil. This is how we treat Iran. Now,
okay,
I'm not defending...
I'm just looking at the clock. You guys interrupt each other just every few minutes. Maybe I should just go bing, and the other person interrupts. You guys are so polite. Dinesh?
All right. Well, first of all, I want to do a mea culpa here because I was wrong about the Iraq War. Not because I said Iraq had not because I said Iraq had nuclear weapons. Of course, you remember with George W. Bush, the claim was that they had these so-called weapons of mass destruction. Not quite the same as nukes, but the idea was it could be chemical weapons. It could be a weapon that could kill a large number of people. Now, this information, which was given to us from high levels in the U.S. government, I think was the first case of where we learned that we can't always trust the government. And we can't trust the government because these intelligence agencies have their own agenda. And this was a neocon scam. And I got to say, I might have been a little too deeply in the neocon world. I went for it. But unlike a lot of the neocons, I broke with them. Most of my former colleagues at AEI won't speak to me. I left the neocon camp, which is now basically the Never Trump camp. And I came into the Trump camp because I think the Trump was based on the idea that, look, we've learned some valuable lessons from the Iraq war. And that is this idea of trying to occupy other countries is a great mistake. By the way, the United States had every right to blow up the Taliban, to chase them out of power. Those were the guys who supplied the monkey bars for 9/11. So if you're talking about a direct attack on the United States, yes, it was Al-Qaeda, but the Taliban was a hospitable regime that trained them. What we should have done is turn to some...
that's a funny comment. Supplied the monkey bars for Al-Qaeda. I like that.
Rival tribes, there are plenty of warlike tribes in Afghanistan, and said, listen...
James again. I love how you guys come onto my platform and Christians are being persecuted in Israel. No, they are not. No, they are not. Individuals in the absolute minority, they are extremist losers that are hated by the entire country. They, singular people, are abusive to Christians, but Christians as a whole in Israel live a great life, enjoy, would not want to live anywhere else in the Middle East. If you've actually been there, you would know that, and go talk to any Christian who's actually living there.
We're going to turn it over to you. You keep kicking their ass from now on, and we're out of here. But we didn't do that. We went over there. We started, conducting meetings and talking about women's rights and a whole bunch of nonsense, and the whole thing backfired on us. So that's a bitter lesson that we've learned, and I think I'm with you on that, Nick. All right, but Iran is a different animal, and I think this is the key. Iran is the one that is threatening Israel, not the other way around. What does Israel want out of Iran? You think Israel wants to go occupy Iran? You think Israel has designs on Iran? Israel has one of the smallest, most godforsaken pieces of earth on the planet. They are just trying to hold onto it. And by the way, it's theirs. Now, what do I mean by that? This is a very important issue because how do you get a country? I mean, how do you get the title deeds of a country? There are really only three ways.
You fight for them.
One way is you're the original inhabitants, right? Like the Native Americans are the original inhabitants. They go, it's ours. That's one way. The second way is there's some sort of a negotiation, a treaty. If someone gives it to you and you get it that way. A third way is conquest. That's how we got large parts of Mexico. That's how the United States now reaches from one end of the ocean to the other. We took a lot of it by force. So that's the third way. Most of the boundaries of most of the countries of the world are established by war and by nothing else. Now, interestingly, with America, you could say that on one side, the Native Americans have the right. They were here first, so they have the title deeds. And then you can say on the other side, well, we conquered them, we fought a war, they lost, that's that, so it's ours. But with Israel, all the arguments benefit Israel. They were the original inhabitants. They were there for 4,000 years, going back to the time of Abraham. Number two, they were awarded Israel by the United Nations in 1948. And number three, they have fought multiple wars, at least three, 1948, 1967, 1973. They beat the combined invading armies of Syria, Jordan, Egypt. So the Arab world united against them. They kicked their butts. And so whether you're looking at
who's the original inhabitants I was fascinating.
or who took it by conquest.
I just looked at the clock, like 5 minutes.
It's such a brilliant point that needs to be drilled into everyone every single time in every argument, whether they're from the woke right or the woke left. Because the point is, all the arguments, depends which angle they come from. So like the woke left come at it from, they're the colonizers, they're the indigenous people of the Palestinian people, and then these white European colonizers came in and kicked out the indigenous people. Well, and that's the same arguments that they put in Australia. So that argument's destroyed because when you look at the actual indigenous people of that land, it's definitely not the Arabs by definition, are conquerors from the Arabian Peninsula. It's the Jews from Judah. There's that one. Then the other way to then if you're a right winger, like the woke right, they don't obviously subscribe to the whole indigenous argument. Otherwise, they run into problems in their own countries, whether it's America or Australia or Canada, whatever. So they'll say if you fight for a country and you win it, then by conquest, it's yours. So that's the answer to the right. Well, we won it because we fought and won every single time. And then to the to anyone else who subscribes to the fact that it's just under the United Nations, then you have that one. But really, the two arguments is like what you hear is the far left, which go on about the indigenous people, but they only want to go as far back in history as, the 1900s. They don't want to go much further than that because then they run into all sorts of trouble about, even biblical history, not from a religious perspective, but just what we know about that land from all Holy Scripture, whether it comes from the Old Testament, the New Testament, or even the Quran itself. And then with the right, suddenly for some reason, people like Nick Fuentes who will fight tooth and nail to argue that America is not the Native Americans because they won. Because America won against the Native Americans, so it is now in their hands. Well, why don't they apply that logic to Israel? I'll give you a hint. The Jews.
We're running over, Nick. I got to be fair. Nick, you got 5 minutes because I just let him run for 5 minutes. Go ahead. It was great. I was listening. Sorry, I got to go ahead.
It was great. It was really
good.
Dinesh,
once again, it just
never
gets
really
back
liked
to
him.
The analytical framework for the conflict is that these are rational actors, and maybe we'll get into Israel's objectives. Iran wants a nuclear arsenal to deter an attack from the United States and Israel. I think that's a credible fear. The United States' interest is they do not want nuclear proliferation. So we don't want Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon. We don't necessarily have an interest in regime change. Israel's strategic objective is to overthrow the government of Iran. And why? It goes back to the Likud party and their takeover of the government in the late 1970s. They witnessed what happened in the Camp David Accords, which is that Egypt got the Sinai back in exchange for peace. They witnessed some of the Israeli ministers try to negotiate with...
What do you mean they witnessed? They agreed. So Land for Peace was an Israeli policy. That's and it just, in time, in certain situations with the Sinai, it worked. But with Gaza, that's like the latest example of it where it clearly didn't work. That's why Israelis don't want to do it in the West Bank, because in Gaza they did Land for Peace and they didn't get peace, but they got land.
the Palestinians. They called it land for peace. We'll give you some of the West Bank in exchange for peace. We'll give Syria the Golan in exchange for peace was the idea. They thought that's what was going to happen. And these Likudniks, the people that have been running Israel basically for 50 years, nearly uninterrupted, they said, we can't keep giving up land in exchange for peace. They said, we need to go on the offensive. This is in Oded Yanon's plan for the 1980s. He was an advisor to Ariel Sharon. This is in the Clean Break Memo in 1996. And in both of these doctrines, and this is consistent throughout, 20, 30-year period, they said we need to go on the offensive, and we need to basically destroy all the big states that are supporting Palestine, all the big states that might pose a threat to Israel. And that is why they push for regime change against Saddam. That's why they push for destabilization of Syria. And ultimately, they saw Iran as sponsoring Hezbollah and the Shiite groups in southern Lebanon, and then eventually Hamas. And so Israel has an interest in what they call creating statelets. They don't want big, powerful regimes like Nasser's Egypt, like the Assad dynasty in Syria, like Gaddafi in Libya. They want small, manageable fiefdoms where they're going to dismember Libya into like 3 countries, dismember Syria into Druze, Alawite, and Sunni, dismember Iraq into Shiite, Kurdish, and Sunni. They want to do the same thing to Iran. And that is because, and I agree with you, Israel wants to be safe, but you characterize Israel as small and fledgling and just trying to hold on to their land. They're the only nuclear power, the most sophisticated, most powerful military and intelligence operation in the Middle East, as evidenced by this very one-sided conflict. And what they want to be safe is regional hegemony. In order to be safe from all threats, they want to make it so that there are no threats. That's why the road to Israeli safety and their right to exist runs through regime change, destabilization, and civil war. And so I'm saying, look, that's probably in their best interest, but it's not in ours. And so that's why I agree with Trump. We should pursue diplomacy with Iran and try to get them to give up their nuclear program with limitations and restrictions without regime change, which is unpredictable.
Just be extra nice to Iran and they'll just... Yes, all Israel wants is safety. And for Israel to get safety... it's not necessarily regime change. Half the regime changes that he attributes to Israel has nothing to do with Israel. But these guys blame everything on Israel or Jews. Sorry, I don't know what happened here. But they will, yeah. So so all Iran has to do is stop threatening annihilation of Israel, and then there is regime. Everything else about their policy can go on. Israel doesn't actually care if Iran is an oppressive regime to their own people. That's up to their own people. The only reason why Israel cares about the regime change is because of their mission statement to target Israel, to annihilate Israel.
Negative effects for us. Israel wants to...
They don't care if there's powerful other states in the region. It's like... And also, if you look on a map, see how tiny Israel is. Yes, they haven't always been a nuclear state. They haven't always had the most powerful military. And they've won, all the wars in the beginning, like 48, everyone thought they were going to get wiped out off the map. 67, people, most of the world thought Israel was going to get wiped off the map. So, and then later on, over the years, through smart building up, they became a superpower on a tiny little piece of land. Like if you compare Israel in land mass and population, they're nothing in compared to Iran. And half these countries thought that they could literally almost walk through Israel and wipe them off the map. They've never succeeded.
Change, and they want us to pick up the pieces and clean up after them, just as we...
Have your little preferences. Some people just don't want war. You think Israelis want war? You guys are like, it is so easy to live here in Australia and say, I'm just anti-war. I just don't want war. War is bad. Okay, cool. You think Israelis want war? They just literally, even Nick Fuentes there concedes that they want to live in, they just want to be safe. They want to live in peace. Israelis do not want war. Israelis are the ones that for all these years have bled and died to protect that tiny piece of land. They don't want war, but they also don't want to be killed. So it's easy to sit here in Australia and say, I just don't want war. I'm just anti-war.
Did in all these other countries. And we deal with the terrorism and the hatred, and we deal with the high gas prices and all the rest of it. So that's the America First position. Restrain Israel from pursuing regime change, restrict Iran's nuclear program. You can use maximum pressure and Reagan doctrine to do it. I'm fine with that. But I think diplomacy is preferable, and that's in our interest to try it. That's my position.
Okay, so I want to go back to Dinesh here, and we're approaching...
And by the way, no, he isn't. Like even if you just went sanctions, all these people, they also like even in the comments here, you see they say, "Oh, lift the sanctions." That's why they hate America, it's because we have sanctions. It's never that. All they want is he shares a view with Iran, a bunch of views actually, because he makes all their arguments that goes against everything that's American. But the view that they share, the most prominent view that they share with Iran is wiping Israel off the map. That's it. And people like Nick Fuentes don't want Jews in their country, but then they also don't want Jews to have their own country.
15 minutes of this. This is amazing. You guys stay as long as you want. I also want to get to questions from X. And I'll just say, because I'm not trying to throw this either way, I have complex views. I know it's all nuanced. I think both of you are making great points, and I'm public about it.
I know what Alex is called. Alex, he's such a clown. His complex views are that he hates the Islamists. He always has, but also he has to go anti-Israel because his entire audience is anti-Israel, so he doesn't want to lose his audience. That's his complex view. So it's not that complex.
I want to blow up Israel, and I also, and I don't like the mullahs, but I don't want to have war with Iran. I know most people don't even like it. My issue is, we saw Netanyahu strike them first and drag us in. And look, I know the proxies, Iran's been striking them in Lebanon and in the West Bank and Gaza and with the Houthis. And I mean, nobody can say who started first, okay? And Iran, does make all these statements, rhetorical. We're going to drive you in the ocean and blow you up and all the rest of it. Okay, so my larger, sure, Dinesh, I'm going to go to you. I've been pretty good here. I just want to, and I got some questions coming up here very soon for both of you, and then we're going to go to questions. But honing in, because both of you guys are very smart, and I'd like to hear, it's a debate, but also a discussion. What do you think's about to happen? I know, Dinesh, you have amazing context. Trump today says twice at Alligator Alcatraz that, we got a deal Monday, you're going to love it, and Netanyahu's coming and all this. And usually Trump doesn't just bluff. That sounds really good. Then you have the mullahs putting out a very rare fatwa against Trump and Netanyahu on Sunday. So just in general, looking at that, but I will just say, Israel initiating the latest round and us coming into it, a week into it, and then all of that, and then I can predict the media was going to say didn't take out the sites. Clearly the sites were highly damaged or obliterated, but then did they hide fissile material? Then the mullahs are, we're going to go all the way to enrichment, and we did hide it. And it's like, to get out of this, the mullahs seem to do whatever it is keeps it going. It's very bizarre. So it's easy for me on straight Western politics to know who the sides are, what the interests are. When you get into these mullahs and things, it gives me a headache, basically. So, as a moderator, I'm supposed to just have easy answers here. A lot of bizarre behavior. Why would the mullahs put a fatwa out? Well, because maybe they're about to fall. We're seeing some evidence. Their foreign minister on TV contradicting them, saying the nuclear sites were basically destroyed. So the intel I'm getting is they could fall. What happens if the mullahs are cornered then? And you see, this just is a complex issue. So you guys can finish up with your round of debates about the history and who's who or whatever. My point is, these are two sides absolutely diametrically opposed to each other. And like Trump said, both sides don't know what the fuck they're doing. They've been fighting so long. I agree with that. How could, generally, gut level, where do both of you see this going? We'll go to Dinesh first and finish up with Nick's response if you want. But then where do you see this going next? Can this be de-escalated? What are the paths out of this? Dinesh D'Souza.
Yeah, the reason I keep anchoring our discussion, not just in history, but kind of in the facts on the ground, is because it's hard to have a debate when the facts are really fuzzy, right? So you mentioned, Alex, that Netanyahu struck first. But if it is true that Iran was a driving force behind October 7th, then Israel did not strike first. Israel struck second. Second of all, let's remember a lot of times. I mean, if we go back in history, not very far, Hitler attacks Poland and Great Britain.
And just saying, it's not even controversial. It's not controversial. Nobody's denying that Iran's proxies are Hamas through funding and training, Hezbollah even more directly, and the Assad regime. Nobody, and the Houthis, nobody's denying all that. So, of course, Iran struck first. The only difference is here. So the question is, why did Israel want to strike now? So the official reason is because of the report that came out by the body that's supposed to inspect all the things, and they said that basically they've enriched to 60%, and it's only a few weeks off before 90%. That's the official reason. Now, I would say that I think that that's true, but on top of that, it's the fact that they managed to take out all their proxies. So Hamas is weakened. They're on their last legs. They're in Gaza. Hezbollah's gone. Hezbollah wasn't even able to help defend us, Iran when they were desperate, and then Assad. First Assad fell because Hezbollah fell. So, and then when Iran called them to come into this last thing, they wanted Hezbollah to get involved in the last round of fighting, and they tapped out. They were not touching, so they're gone. The Houthis are copying it as well in a way that they've never received before. And so it was a chance for Israel to actually be able to do something without being hit from all sides like they would have been if they've ever engaged in Iran in that period. So it was actually the cleanest way of doing it. And it's not it's literally, if you look at how precisely they hit everything, it's unbelievable. The low damage and civilian like the civilian deaths, casualties, the what do they call it? What's a term for? What do they call it? Collateral damage. So the amount of civilians killed in the targeted strikes in Iran, and also in Lebanon. So it's just the idea that Israel struck first is in itself ludicrous, because we accept that every attack there was actually Iranian proxies. But then on top of it, it's like, yes, this is the fight. This is the head of the snake. And here's our chance, because we knocked out all your other guys who started with us. So remember, Hamas started on October 7th, then Hezbollah, which is also even more directly Iran. They're literally controlled by Iran. They struck on October 8th, joining. I think Iran's dumbest player was not actually joining on October 8 as well, and joining the fray at that time when Israel was kind of bamboozled and taken by surprise.
Great Britain declares war on Germany. Japan attacks the United States at Pearl Harbor. Did we just go to war with Japan? No, we didn't. We sent Patton starts taking U.S. troops into Europe. We went after the Nazis, even though the Nazis did not attack us directly. It was the Japanese who did. All right, let me turn to Nick. Nick says that it's the goal of Israel to somehow topple all the big, strong powers in the Middle East. And let's test if that's true. Which are the big, strong powers in the Middle East? And the answer is, certainly in the Muslim world, there are three. There is Saudi Arabia, there is Egypt, and there is Iran. These are the three big boys.
Actually, I don't know Egypt, but I would think Turkey. Turkey's a big one.
Of the Middle East. And they are jostling, by the way, for power, the one against the other. Israel has
Turkey's definitely got to be on that list.
Excellent relations with 2 out of the 3. Now, the only reason Israel doesn't have...
And 2 out of the 3. Actually, if you're including Egypt, so would you call Egypt a superpower? I guess. I don't know. I don't know what's the kind of thing to determine that, but let's go with it. Let's say Saudi Arabia, definitely, nobody's disputing that. Let's say Egypt, let's say Iran, and then let's add Turkey. So 3 out of 4 of them, Israel's on good terms. Whether it's official or unofficial, they're on good terms. They're working with 3 out of 4 of them. It's just the 4th one. It's the one that's calling for its destruction daily.
Excellent relations with Iran is Iran continues to not only plot and scheme, but openly declare and fund military forces, Hezbollah, also Hamas, that are aimed ultimately at eradicating Israel from the map. That's the meaning of from the river to the sea.
Exactly.
So Israel is willing to get along with powerful forces in the region.
Exactly.
It's made friends with some of them. It gave back land to Egypt. It's on good terms with Saudi Arabia. I think it would be on good terms with Iran if Iran wasn't driving the aggression from its side. So I completely reject Nick's idea that somehow Iran is fighting a defensive war. Nobody wants to invade Iran, least of all Israel. Israel would like to have nothing to do with Iran. They've got a successful society on their own. Now, you're asking about Trump and kind of where all of this is going. And I think I want to highlight the simple...
Aussies kicked butt at the Battle of Beersheba. Absolutely, Jamie. It's true. I have actually the tattoo. That's the Battle of Beersheba. That's the Australian in me. Abby, thank you. Welcome tonight to the Super Chat. What do we got? Hippo character with a pink hat flips it back and raises his thumb up in the air. I don't know who we're talking about, Abby, but really appreciate the Super Chat as usual. Who are we referring to? The hippo character with the pink hat. Anyways, we'll continue going. Let me know who you're referring to.
Point that, look, Trump is actually a kind of master of this kind of, well, I'm going to call it mafia diplomacy. By that, I mean that he acts like Don Corleone. He twists people's arms. He basically tries to pull everybody into line. And sort of this idea, number one, when Trump basically even started talking about the idea of striking the Iranian facilities, there was a massive scream on the part of the, let's call it the Nick Fuentes camp, but there were many others in it. This is disastrous. We're going to be in a war. We're going to have tremendous casualties. The Iranians are going to strike back at us. Just wait for it. None of this actually happened.
He can actually also say Alex Jones. Alex Jones was 100% in that camp, but he's being kind to the moderator. It is a 2-on-1, this thing. Alex is a bit more nuanced than Nick, because he absolutely accepts that the Islamists are a threat to us. But he's on Nick's side because of his viewership.
So if I'm going to show a little modesty about Iraq, it would be good for Nick to admit that he and so many others were completely wrong about what the effect of Trump's strikes were going to be. Number two, Israel is a country of 10 million people.
Sasha says the Jews settled in Israel came from Poland. Bibi is Polish, changed his name. The Jews who settled in Israel are not Polish. Less than half are not even Polish, like European, you mean. Let's just pretend you're not that dumb. Less than half of Israel is. So it's actually about, I think it works out, out of the Jews, because right now there's 20 or so percent, let's look it up, 20% Arab. Then there's, I think, the remaining 70%, more than 50% are Arab Jews, like my background. And so they're less than, so really they make up less than 30% or something. So they're actually European Jews, Polish Jews, whatever, they're a minority in Israel. Sorry.
12 million people. The United States is 350 million plus.
But I don't even know what you're arguing. If you're arguing that, then what's your problem? Like, do you have a problem with white people in, let's say, Australia? Do you have a problem with Europeans in Australia? Do you think we should give it back to the Aboriginals because they're black and we came from Europe? Like, what's your point? So it goes back to the three arguments. Israel has more legitimacy than anything, either through conquest, through actual indigenous rights, or the fact that it was determined by the UN. So, like, which one?
Seriously telling me that Israel is controlling America?
Let's stop there. You've got 4 minutes. Let's let Nick, and then we're going to go to break and come back. I've got questions, and then listeners have questions from X. Nick, responding to that.
Sure. So to address the first point, Saudi Arabia is not a major power in the Middle East. We give them a lot of weapons and things like that, but Saudi Arabia has a small population, mostly foreign workers. It's held together by this weird dynasty from 100 years ago because they sell oil.
What's the population of Saudi Arabia? What is the population? Don't tell Tucker I don't know that. Okay, around 22 million. So, Saudi citizens is around 22 million. Foreign citizens are 14 million, right? So it's majority Saudi. I don't know what he was just saying, but the point that I'm going to make is that didn't he a minute ago call Israel this superpower where Israel has less than half that population? Like, that's what I mean with Nick Fuentes. It's like he makes the same argument. If an argument doesn't suit his current position, he'll make literally the opposite argument for another point.
They couldn't even defeat the Houthis in Yemen. I mean, they were at war with the Houthis for 10 years with American backing. They said they were fighting Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. They couldn't beat back these guys. They're pirates, effectively. So Saudi Arabia is not a major power. And what's more is they're effectively in a relationship with Israel already. They, like the Emirates, like Bahrain, are going to enter into the...
So again, if that's all true, then how are they not a superpower? If they are with America, because all the reasons that you're making, all the arguments that you're making that what makes Israel a superpower, the backing of America and all this, how is Saudi Arabia not? What's the difference?
Abraham Accords. They're submitted to Israel. And that's the fate. If you are against the West, if you're against Israel and the United States, you get overthrown, you get regime changed, you get invaded, civil war, or you're like Egypt and Jordan, where you get bribed and become a Western puppet to Israel, and Saudi Arabia wants to follow suit. So I would just say that, and that's obviously the case also because Netanyahu and other ministers in the Israeli government have said for 30 years they want regime change in Iran. That's just not even disputed. In the mid-1990s, they're calling for regime change. In 2006, Netanyahu's calling for regime change. They're publishing videos all the time in Farsi and English saying the Iranian people need to rise up. It's just not even a question that they do want that. And they want that because Iran is a rival. Iran has one of the largest populations. It's often said about the Middle East, you've got three countries, Turkey, Egypt, Iran. The rest are tribes of flags. Okay. Iran has a big middle class, big economy, oil wealth. They have a lot of intelligence.
So it's funny. He's bringing up Turkey, Egypt as well. I don't know why people. I don't know if Egypt's a superpower. I think it's Turkey, definitely Saudi Arabia. Denying that Saudi Arabia is not a superpower is the only reason why he's making that argument is because it counters his point that Israel's just going to fight anyone that's a superpower in the region. That's his point. But again, even if you cut Egypt out, you've got Turkey, which he agrees is a superpower, and Saudi Arabia, that really is one. And both of them are good with Israel.
People, they're a threat to Israel's security and hegemony in the region. And that's why Israel wants to depose that country, along with all the other ones with ambitions, whether they be Islamist or pan-Arabist. With regard to Israel, and we can maybe get into this topic because I think we sort of settled a lot of this.
Hold on, I got to be sorry. Let me just hear back what he just said.
Said for 30 years they want regime change in Iran. That's just not even disputed. In the mid-1990s, they're calling for regime change. In 2006, Netanyahu's calling for regime change. They're publishing videos all the time in Farsi and English saying the Iranian people need to rise up. It's just not even a question that they do want that. And they want that because Iran is a rival. Iran has one of the largest populations. It's often said about the Middle East, you've got 3 countries, Turkey, Egypt, Iran. The rest are tribes of flags. Iran has a big middle class, big economy, oil wealth. They have a lot of intelligent people. They're a threat to Israel's security and hegemony in the region. And that's why Israel wants to depose that country, along with all the other ones with ambitions, whether they be Islamist or pan-Arabist. With regard to Israel, and we can maybe...
So hold on, so he's made a different argument now, because before he was saying Israel only wanted to fight them because he didn't want any other superpower, but now he says it's because... rightly, because they're anti-Israel. They're opposition to Israel. So it doesn't matter. So that goes directly against his previous argument that Israel just doesn't want any other power in the Middle East. Thank you. We should put Nick versus Nick.
Into this topic, because I think we sort of settled a lot of this other stuff. We're looping a bit. But to get to the question of Israel driving U.S. foreign policy...
What does Abby say? Abby says, this is in response to the last one, too tired to comment, so I sent a super sticker. Apparently, it doesn't send the GIF to you, but describes it in writing, hence the weird last chat. That's actually pretty funny. Yeah, I get what happened. Okay. Yeah, no, it might send it on actual YouTube, but when it comes through the system here, it sends it in text. It's like when you... have you ever noticed that? If you have an iPhone and then somebody sends you something like a sticker on an Android, it describes it. Or if somebody likes your comment on an Android, it'll spell it out. Appreciate your super chats, Abby. As usual, you're a champion.
It's pretty clear. Trump initiated diplomacy with Iran in April. He had Netanyahu at the White House for talks about the tariffs, and he announced that he was going to engage Iran in negotiations over the nuclear program. That same day, Netanyahu went on TV and said the only deal we will accept is if we get to blow up Iran's nuclear program and if they follow the Libya model. The Libya model is where Libya gave up their nukes with inspections and then we regime changed them 8 years later. And that was obviously a poison pill to blow up the talks. They said repeatedly just last week, the defense minister came out and said, we are pursuing decapitation of the supreme leader. And when asked, did you get permission from the United States? He said, we don't need permission on such matters. And I believe, of course, you absolutely do. I wish it was as you're...
Slow down the playback speed or something. You aren't processing. I am processing what's being said. I thought I wasn't sure what I heard for that second, so I went back and listened to it. I don't want to watch it at one-time speed because otherwise we'll be here all night, and I can't be bothered doing that. So I never watch back. I'm usually, if I was here alone, if I wasn't with everyone, I'd be watching it at 2 speeds. I'm doing it here at 1.25, but I'm also got my eyes on the comments. So this is the way I do it. If you don't like it, don't share the stream.
Describing where we are in control of Israel and they're our client. This has never been the case. Israel was the driving force behind the road to the war in Iraq. They're the driving force behind the road to the war in Iran. And the question of, and this is the last thing, just briefly, was I wrong about the strikes in Iran? We're not in a war in Iran. Of course we're in a war in Iran. Trump killed Soleimani in 2020. He comes back into office and picks up where he left off. Israel attacks Iran, and then we bomb Fordo. And this is going to be the case in the future.
Okay, yes. So I love how Nick Fuentes now is arguing that he was actually right. So all these people like Nick Fuentes, including Alex Jones as well, argued that if America strikes Iran, when they said we'll be in war, America would be in war with Iran, they meant like boots on the ground. It's going to be a hot war directly between Iran and thousands of, Tucker was saying thousands of Americans will be there. Now to argue, no, we are actually currently in war with Iran is disingenuous. It's not true. That's not what you said. Because if you had described what played out, if you described correctly what was going to would play out and what did play out, people wouldn't be so scared. There wouldn't be this mass hysteria around America and Trump striking him because nothing happened. But it's just such a weird way of rewriting history from 2 weeks ago as your own history, what you were describing, the threat of America striking Iran.
Iran says they're not giving up enrichment. The United States says you have to have 0% enrichment. It's setting the stage for more strikes. We've been in a state of hostilities.
Okay. Nick Fuentes, stay right there. We're going to take a break here. I'm going to ask both of you during the break. The producer is how long you want to stay. go another 50 minutes. I'll go another hour and a half, 2 hours. Oh, 5 hours. This is riveting. And I think this is a really very professional, intellectual debate. This is not people trying to make points for the other person. They're both very knowledgeable. This is a very former head of a federal agency, best-selling author, filmmaker, super scholar. Nick, for 26, is you can disagree with his politics, agree with him. The guy's a phenomenon. I know any 26-year-old knows half what he knows. It's very refreshing to hear this. I'm not saying he's going over the audience head. Our audience is way more advanced than most people. I imagine a lot of people, millions watching on this big viral thing. I'm having like a lot of saying, like, remember it? Oh, yeah. So I'm having trouble following some of this with Dinesh, some of the things he's saying, and Nick, but I think about it, oh, yeah, that's true. So it was, this is not baby time here. This is not, real simple, mindless slogans. This is a real debate here. And this is what debates I think really should be, like the Lincoln Douglas debates. So we'll find out how long they want to stay. There's another issue. Because I told the crew on the X post, asking what your questions from the debate wants. We can't find out of thousands of questions, maybe 10 that are pro-Israel. And I'm not, again, I don't want to just come on here and read anti-Israel stuff. I want to get both sides for debate. We literally, which the poll numbers show, the whole world's turning against Israel. And they have nuclear weapons. Like Michael Savage is pro-Israel. He came on last Friday. He said, no, Israel's going the wrong way. The whole world's turning against them. This is going to get Israel destroyed. They got nukes. I mean, whether you love Israel or hate them, they get cornered. Samson option. So, I'm sitting here telling the crew, get me a pro-Israel comment on X. And literally, they found like one. I've got an issue here. They're all, it's out of control. Dinesh is a great guy. I'll put him in jail. He was put in jail by Obama for supporting Trump. So, and by the way, I'm very thankful for Trump overall on domestic policy, economy, everything. I think he did what he thought was best with the Iran strikes. I hope it works out. And we need to be adults about this. We don't be like the left that calls for arresting anyone we disagree with. And I'm just being honest here. I think it's shocking. Everybody's on X saying arrest Dinesh decision. Don't worry, it's already happened to him. So this is and I'm not trying to. Sorry. You get 2 minutes before we go to break. Go ahead.
I was saying maybe what we can do is do a brief sort of summary of our positions for a couple of minutes, and then let's set a time and take questions, and we can each get a chance to answer them. Let's see, it's a little after 8 Central Time. Why don't we go till 9 if Nick's agreeable? I think we've sort of agreed we'll do 2 hours total. And so I'm good with that.
No, sounds good. You know what I can do? Because I got no serious questions on X. It's just, I'll read some of these. They're good questions, but it's all like foaming at the mouth.
It's not about the debate. It's just about understanding what's actually going on here. So Alex Jones is saying that he wants to read some of the comments. He wants some real questions. But the first thing he said is they're all just anti-Israel. He wants balance. He wants a bit of anti. Now, that is what I was explaining to you before. The reason why Alex Jones went from supporting Israel at the beginning of the conflict, after October 7, to becoming super anti-Israel again. I know historically he's done that, but it's because of that precise reason. His whole audience are like gropers. They're like Nick Fuentes fans. They're like low, a large contingent of them are low IQ, they cannot, so even he, and then what he said, the second part here is that they're not real questions. Like, they're just like attacks of saying arrest Dinesh and put him in jail. Like, it's just dumb statements. So there's no real substance to what they're saying. But it explains, it says more about Alex Jones's audience than it does about Dinesh's position. The fact that everybody there is just saying hateful shit against either Dinesh just for actually making substantial, proper, articulate arguments against Nick Fuentes, who speaks very well, but he's so wrong in all his positions, and he's actually taking anti-American positions for somebody who claims to be America first. But the fact that they can't even engage in the conversation in a respectful way, and in a way that's actually trying to dig for the truth, that they're making crazy comments that even Alex Jones is like, well, I can't actually read any of these because they're so ridiculous, just tells you everything you need to know about their audience, and that's it.
Oh, just whatever. The point is, I'll read them, okay? I'm just being honest. Like, I wanted to get both sides. I'm not getting it. Well, we'll fire the phones up, but I want at least an hour. So let's go to 10 after 9. I'll get that both from you because I want to take a bunch of comments. Here's the toll-free number. Fire up the phone system. Never fear, the phones are here. We'll have people call and actually have some real questions. I'm not like, oh, look at Jones trying to get pro-Israel questions. No, I'm not just going to, like, literally
Baz, thank you for the super chat. World War III has proven to be quite dull so far. Free Rukshan. Yes, it totally is. That's the thing. Like, this was the big World War III that Nick Fuentes and even Alex Jones, it's not good like Alex Jones get away with, but Nick Fuentes was promising that the Jews have caused World War III, and now, instead of apologizing for getting it wrong to his audience that he lied to, and his audience doesn't really care anymore because they also just blame all their failures on Jews. He says, no, I'm actually right. We're in war now. Well, like Baz says, thank you for the super chat, this is the most dull World War III I've ever heard of. And for Alex has said we're leading into World War III about 7 times this year.
50 questions in a row anti-Israel. I want to get both sides for a real debate. So the toll-free number, we're firing the system up right now, 877-789-2539, 877-789-2539, 877-789-ALEX. But it shows you just 2 years ago, half the stuff would be pro-Israel. That's a whole nother issue of what the poll numbers show, the world turning against Israel, which, again, even if you hate Israel, they got nuclear weapons. They're not going away unless it's in Armageddon. 877-789-2539. Dinesh D'Souza is a best-selling author and one of the top documentary filmmakers in all time, probably the #1 documentary for actual grosses. Dinesh D. D'Souza, DineshD'Souza.com. And, of course, you can find Nick Fuentes on Rumble, where he dominates at Nick J. Fuentes on X, NicholasJFuentes.com. We're going to take a short little 4-minute break, and we're going to let both men have 6 minutes. That way they have plenty of time to make a summation, and then we will take some phone calls and read some blow Israel off the map comments on there. We'll be right back to us. Force.com/show. It changes the world. So remember, Paul Revere's, you're not part of the solution. You are the solution. You're everything. When you share the live feed, when you share the clips of the show, when you send that out to everyone you know, that's the reach, the amplification. That is 99% of this operation. You are the whole shooting match. And the InfoWar is everything. And you are the mind, the bones, the guts, the blood, the will, the soul of the InfoWar. So release your will and power now. Destroy them. All right. Well, this has been a great debate. We're 1 hour.
Rational, that they can be patient, strategic. That comes from a deep respect and humility about the nature of regime acquiring a nuclear bomb. I don't think they're pursuing one right now. I think they have a latent threat to deter regime change from Israel. And I think that on the flip side of that, Israel has been pushing for regime change in Iran like they have in virtually every other country for 30 years. That's why the America First position, how do we balance these two competing states?
Israel has been pushing for regime change in virtually every other country. What?
Which are, they both have their religious zealotry. They both have their share of terrorism. Neither of them are the United States. How do we balance those competing forces in the Middle East? I think
they all have their share of terrorism. Give me an example of terrorism in the last 50 years from Israel. The only terrorism that you can attribute to, it wasn't the state of Israel. Prior to the state of Israel, there were terrorist groups when they were fighting the guerrilla warfare before the state. So between, what was it, in the so after the first massacre was in the 1920s, Arabs versus Jews in the British Mandate of Palestine. So in that period there were terrorism, but in the last 50 years, give me an example. Even since 1948, give me an example of one act of terrorism. So since the state of Israel was reestablished in 1948. Give me an example. He's just like comparing, really, and you know how many Islamic terrorists there has been in that same period? I think, what is it, like? I think since 2021, there's, what was it? It was something like 40,000 terrorist attacks, and so he's saying they both have, and you know how many are related to Israel. So any terrorist attack from Hamas, Hezbollah, or the Houthis. Let's see if we can get a total number, just to give it an example. So just through their proxies, Let's see if ChatGPT give me, let's see if it gives us a number. No, total number. I just want a number. It says a total number. Oh, God. So Hamas has, since 2000, 425 terrorist attacks. Hezbollah, it says 5,000, over 5,000 attacks. So what do we got there? That's like that's then you got the Houthis are responsible for 100. So you're talking you're talking, just from this quick search, what did we say? 5,000, 55. So about, almost 6,000 terrorist attacks since 2000 from Iran's proxies. How many terrorist attacks from Israel has there been since 2000? Not one. So this moral equivalence is just so ridiculous, it's laughable. But the problem is, like, Nick is super articulate. He says it really confidently, really quickly, really nicely, and he states it as fact. But it's complete and utter insane nonsense.
Restrain Israel from pursuing regime change in Iran. I think we make a deal with Iran to restrict their nuclear activity. And that comes from a deep respect and humility about the nature of regime change, the size of Iran, the undertaking that regime change would be, and with respect to what our own foreign policy is. I think that we had a nuclear deal with Iran, and it was going well. They were abiding by it. We had monitoring. We had 24/7 cameras. We knew what they were doing. We have engaged Iran in good faith before. They've demonstrated by telegraphing strikes and through calibrating them that they're rational, that they can be patient strategically. And I think that we should attempt to do that again. I think that Trump and Biden both tried to do that over the past 12 years. They've been repeatedly sabotaged by Israel. Their dream is to drag us into a confrontation where we fight their regime change war for them. And I think that's something that serves only the interest of Israeli hegemony and not the interest of American strategic withdrawal and removal from the Middle East so that we can focus on our real rival, which is China. So that's kind of my big picture view. And it's based on fundamental assumptions about the nature of Iran's regime and what Iran wants. And the same is true about Israel, what the nature of the Israeli regime is and what they want. And so that's a summary of what I think the America First position is in this conflict.
All right, so you only went for like less than 3 minutes. Dinesh D'Souza.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief as well. I've been trying to sort of figure out Nick Fuentes as this debate has been going on. And I've come to a kind of startling conclusion. I mean this only tentatively because I don't know enough about Nick. But from what I'm hearing, basically Nick Fuentes is a Democrat. And what that means is that he can't be America First because he is echoing all the tired, discredited, have faith in the goodwill of our enemies, have faith in treaties. This is what Democrats said throughout Reagan, throughout the Cold War. Let's trust the Russians. They're trustworthy. They want peace too, don't they? And now, we have Nick and he's like, we had a deal. Well, it was Obama's deal, remember? You think Obama was a good guy? You think Obama was America first? What do you think Obama was up to? America last. Obama's idea was let's strengthen our enemies and undermine our friends. Why do you think he got rid of Mubarak in Egypt? Because he was an ally of the United States. And then we got the Muslim Brotherhood in power in Egypt. That was not, Obama is not the same as Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter was an idiot. He was a nincompoop. We'll give him the Presidential Nincompoopery Award. Obama's malevolent. Obama represents ultimately, if you follow what Obama says, it's basically what our enemies want and not what we want. And so notice, Nick, how close your position is to Obama. The Iranians are reasonable. The Iranians don't have any imperialistic ambitions. They don't have any real ill will toward Israel. Their militarization is purely defensive. We can make a peaceful deal with them. The only thing you didn't say is we should give them a whole bunch of money. I guess that's your one difference with Obama is you wouldn't give them the pallets of cash that Obama turned over. But otherwise, you're saying pretty much the same thing. Now, here's what I'm saying, which is the opposite. In the world, America has allies and we have enemies. Our enemies, our rivals, their adversaries, they wish us ill. They would do regime change over here if they could. And who are some of those people? Well, China, to some degree, Russia, certainly Iran. And so if you read Clausewitz, Sun Tzu, Machiavelli, the whole idea is you want to weaken your enemies and strengthen your friends. That's what America First means. It means promoting American interests in the world. And you seem to be promoting the opposite. You seem to be saying, well, enemies aren't that bad, and our friends aren't our real friends. Why don't we put some pressure on our friends, and why don't we trust our enemies more? This is basically straight out the logic of the Democratic Party. It's been disproven time and time again. And I think you're wrongly drawing lessons from the Iraq War that are basically turning you into a 26-year-old Obama.
Okay, so I said 6-minute closing comments, but Nick went less than 3. You just went less than 3. So let's keep going here. Nick, I'm sure you want to respond to that.
Yeah, I didn't really expect where you were going with that, but in retrospect, I should have. When you said this is tentative and I've just met you, I thought maybe it was going to be positive, but I should have known it was going to be he's a Democrat. It's just a very strange thing that the moral universe you live in seems to be based on partisanship. It's Republicans and Democrats, like the KKK, the Nazis, Iran, like every ideology that's against like America and Israel's interests can be kind of molded into this like Democrat Party narrative. Thing is about Democrats and Republicans, I don't think there's a big difference. We have the same national security apparatus. Obama had the same defense secretary as Bush. And we maintained very much a similar foreign policy under Obama that we did under Bush. And then again under Trump, Biden, and then Trump again. I think we have a deep state, the Pentagon, CENTCOM, National Security Council, the Directorate of National Intelligence, the IC. I mean, all these people are permanent bureaucrats. I don't think there's a lot of daylight between Republicans and Democrats. I think that's a meaningless distinction. I wouldn't say, I don't know what that means to be a Democrat. I'm a Catholic, I'm a reactionary,
Oops, I realized I was muted. Sorry, guys. He's basically saying that if there's no difference between the Democrats and the Republicans, why is he so upset to be called a Democrat? Sorry, guys.
Immigration moratorium. I voted for Trump in 2016. Like, I don't know where you get off saying I'm a Democrat other than that. I think we should pursue diplomacy. And by the way, it's not based on good faith towards our enemies like Iran or Russia or China for that matter. It's based and anchored again in foreign policy realism. I'm a realist. I'm not a liberal internationalist or a liberal globalist where I believe there's a world of friendly democracies and autocratic foes. I would say that Israel is similarly a foe. Israel spies on Americans. Israel has planned and perpetrated false flag attacks against Americans in the past. When 9/11 happened, Bibi Netanyahu said it's a good thing because now we can sympathize with what they go through.
I love how his response to Dinesh is literally just confirming everything Dinesh just said. Literally all of Dinesh's arguments just a minute ago is being confirmed. And his argument in response is that essentially there is no difference between the two. So I don't know how that means that it's negative that he called you a Democrat when you're saying there's actually no difference. And then on top of it, then you're doubling down on your support for the enemy and hating on your allies. Like he's a leftist. He's like, it's so insane that people who identify as right wing would follow this. You're literally, you are the woke right, and this is why.
And they looked at that as a gift because they thought that we would support them against the Palestinians.
Avi's having nightmares. I don't really care. I actually think that the only reason why I thought it was important to publish this beyond Alex Jones is because the problem is a lot of people switch off as soon as it's InfoWars. A lot of people just look at that and go, oh, I'm not even going to listen to it. And I think this debate deserves to be seen by more people because the average person, not the gropers online that are stuck here and they'll think Nick won no matter what. As long as he's condemning Jews, he's won. Just like all the Islamists, just like the far left. They'll think he's won. But then anyone who's actually listening to this with an open mind and in good faith and not with a ready thing, they'll realize that it's true. Nick is acting like maybe not like a Democrat. I think he's acting like a further left. He's woke right. He's acting like the woke left because he's a noticer.
Then we would support them against their other rivals in the region. So this idea that we have friends and foes and, the Israel's part of the Avengers and the Iran is part of the bad guys. I think this is just juvenile and childish. And it's like I'm debating Fox News, this kind of stuff about.
Okay, so since we went off the debate forum, which is fine, Dinesh, counter that and back to Nick.
I would rather be Fox News than a Democrat any day. But that was Nick's comeback.
But I have a few questions for you that I want to go to callers and I want to go to comments on X. But Dinesh, anything back?
Yeah, the polarization of the world is not the result of some sort of ideological fantasy. It's a simple reality. You can see it in the animal kingdom. If there are two strong animals that are in a herd, they will fight each other for leadership. If there are two powerful countries in the world, they will become rivals, and the small countries around them will basically take sides, and you will begin to see.
Yeah, I know the term rhino, and I think that totally. That's exactly what Nick is. And the funny thing is, do you remember before Trump even got elected, like he was actually campaigning for Kamala Harris, essentially saying not to vote for Trump. And then when Trump won by a landslide and showed how actually his Groyper army was so much less like they don't, outside of the internet, they're powerless, they're irrelevant. Like he literally campaigned against Trump, and they're that irrelevant that it made no difference. So for him to act like he's not a Democrat, where he was actually essentially campaigning for the Democrats last time, but nobody cared, nobody listened, it actually means like it is the internet. The internet is absolutely in these guys. It works well for these guys because Nick Fuentes can get super support by all the different groups. So the far left, which agree with him, and the Islamists.
Kind of polarization.
So survival of the fittest.
It's not survival. It's a description of a power struggle that drives international relations. And you'll be very naive if you don't see that force is at the bottom of international politics. Now, domestically, American politics is divided generally into two camps. Now, I realize that Nick...
Kofi time. I'm seeing your comments, mate. If you want to send me a message, I can bring you onto the stream.
...wants to say, oh, they're just the same. But just think of the stupidity of saying that, because if they're just the same, it would make no difference if Jimmy Carter or Ronald Reagan won the 1980 election. I honestly believe that if Reagan wasn't in power for 2 terms, the Soviet Union might not have collapsed. In a sense, Nick is saying he voted for Trump in 2016, but it didn't really matter. It wouldn't have mattered if Hillary was president, because Hillary would have been pretty much the same as Trump. And similarly, Nick is saying now that he wouldn't mind, really, if Kamala Harris won the 2024 election, because after all, the country would be pretty much the same, because the 2 parties are a uniparty. And as to quote him, these are meaningless distinctions. Well, I think the whole idea of America First, of MAGA, of Trump is based on the idea that, look, yes, there are common forces. The intelligence agencies have been a malign influence in both parties. And there is a kind of drinking at the swamp establishment, and Republicans and Democrats are part of that. But nevertheless, there are distinctions that really matter. This country already in just a few months is very different than it would be if Kamala Harris. The border would not be secure. We wouldn't be looking at making these tax cuts.
If Nick got his way and Kamala Harris won, that's he needs to point that out. It's forgotten that Nick Fuentes was actually the one campaigning for essentially Kamala Harris or against Trump. And the world would look so different right now if it was Kamala Harris.
Permanent. We wouldn't be looking at 10,000 new border agents, and on it goes. We would be dealing with the trans phenomenon, would be shoved down our throats. Probably, Nick, you and Alex would still be thrown off social media. So the Trump phenomenon matters. Trump has made a difference. I'm not saying that Trump is not open to criticism. I'm not saying that MAGA means some kind of we all have to follow Trump like the Pied Piper. But what I am saying is that Trump has proven far more often to be right than wrong. And if I'm choosing
Dinesh,
between the foreign
Dinesh,
policy
thank you. Brief comeback from Nick.
I think I'm going to go with Trump.
All right, I understand. Nick, quick comeback. And then I got a couple questions for you guys. And I want to go to questions from the audience.
Yeah, I mean, as far as all of this is concerned, Trump and Biden and Kamala and all of that, I would say yes. I don't think it's even controversial at this point to say that there really is no distinction, especially when it concerns matter of foreign policy. I mean, Biden gave Israel $20 billion last year. When Israel was in peril, when Israel was fighting this war in Gaza and against the Houthis and Hezbollah, it was Biden last year in April that gave Israel...
Some stuff. Avi is lying. Nick never endorsed Kamala Harris. No, he campaigned against Trump. He told people not to vote for Trump. You want me to find where he did? I will. Okay. Hold on. Let's find the videos in which Nick Fuentes, and I've got somebody else Leon's gonna come in. I saw him commenting. I'll bring him in onto the feed. Give me 2 seconds. Let me find, where are the windows coming up? Boom. Give me a second. Let's bring Leon. Where's the guests? Where is it? Films. Interview. Okay, here we go. Where's that? Damn, where did that go? Give me 2 seconds. Let's find Nick doing that. And then I've just got to find where this window went. Interview. I can't seem to find where it went. Window, interview, where damn, where's it gone? What's that? Hold on, guys. We will find where he did. Wait, hold on. It might be this other screen.
Investors have been told it's unlikely they'll see a cent.
Just trying to. No, that went somewhere else. I can't seem to find where my interview. Oh, here we go. I've lost the plot, ladies and gentlemen. All right, I've got one. Okay. Let's refresh that. I'm going to bring on Leon, and then I'm going to find, or I'm going to see that I can find where... let's see this. Boom. Okay. Okay. We'll do that while Leon signs in, but I want to see if I can find the link as to where let me see if I can find it. Oh, here we go. Let's see if this one's it. Give me a sec. I'm going to find this video just because for those who are saying that Nick Fuentes never campaigned, he campaigned against Trump. He was saying don't vote for Trump, which means he was saying essentially vote for Kamala or help Kamala. Like, what's the difference? The practical difference is something. All right, let's go here. Let's see if I can get video. Video. Yeah, gotcha, I think. This is it.
I was a little shocked at this clip here, guys. So Nick Fuentes, I mean, we covered the story. He was actually giving Trump a lot of credit the other week.
If you're a Catholic, you can't vote for Trump. You cannot vote for somebody who is now frequently supporting abortion rights. Frequently. It seems like every week he supports abortion. Catholics should not support Trump. If you are anti-war, you cannot support Trump. Trump is the World War III candidate. Trump is talking about wiping Iran off the map. That's where the war is going to go nuclear, not Ukraine. You can't vote for Trump. If you're an...
Dude, he's even talking about Iran back then. Nick Fuentes was never MAGA. Nick Fuentes was campaigning, and this was in the lead up to the election, not to
immigration restrictionist, you can't vote for Trump. They're not deporting any illegals. Okay, that's not happening. They admitted as much. And they're going to bring in more legal immigrants than ever before. There's some silver lining that we're going to...
Welcome to the show, mate. Hold on 1 second. I've got to copy something.
G'day.
Hold on. I'll just copy the comments. Damn, that one. Let me just get it so we can get the comments going. We're just having a bit of fun. Noticing the notices. Let's just
The notices.
The notices here.
Asking questions. Just asking questions.
Yes, Nick Fuentes, because it turns out I found somebody in the comments was saying that Nick Fuentes never campaigned for Kamala, which
He openly endorsed her. As far
I
as
don't
I'm
know.
aware.
I don't know if he endorsed her, but
He actually praised her.
Maybe. All right. I didn't.
There's actually a video. He devoted an entire video praising her.
Well, but is it this video
I'll
that
dig it out
is
somewhere.
it this video?
Jobs in the Trump admin, maybe it's bad, but we're going to get in and fix it. Think again. Because the personnel are going to be controlled by Jared Kushner. None of these people can vote for Trump. I'm calling on Catholics, anti-war supporters, immigration restrictionists, and MAGA loyalists to stay home and not vote for Trump. And if we go forward with any operations with Groyper War II, from now on, that is the goal. At one point, it was to get Trump's attention. Going forward, it's going to be to get people not to vote, period.
There you have it.
Okay, so in that one, he was saying to stay home. So, okay, Sorry, I stand corrected. He was saying to stay home, which is not the
Was that a podcast? Was he on a podcast?
No, that
Because
was
the one,
I don't know if you want
it was a reaction video.
if you find the other one, then you can.
Yeah, because the other one was a solo video where he did a solo rant.
Yeah, well, that was somebody reacting, and it might have been
I
that.
see.
It might have been that. Hold on, I'm just gonna check the comments on here. Oh damn, what have I done? Hold on. I'm just. All right, let's just not do that. All right, I will. Let's go back to watching this clown. So yeah, so I stand corrected. He wasn't saying vote for Kamala, but I have no idea how there is any difference between saying don't vote. No, I didn't prove that I lied about Nick. He literally said do not vote for Trump. So he was anti-Trump in the lead up to the election, which by definition means he was supporting Kamala. If you're not voting for Trump, if you're saying do not vote for Trump, stay at home. And I was saying at the time, I hope Trump wins by also winning the, the popular vote, because then it just shows how irrelevant these clowns are. Like, on the internet, they seem like they hold all the power. Like, even my comments here are inundated with their followers that just, like this. Like, will claim...
Mostly bot farms.
But they'll claim, like, even in this case, that he wasn't that's not supporting Kamala. He's actually just against Trump. It's like, well, by definition, if you're against Trump, if you're against somebody in a 2-horse race, if you're against Trump in a 2-horse race, then by definition you're supporting the other side. You're only helping the other side.
I've just found a video where he purportedly praised Kamala Harris.
Can you send it to my X? I'll pull it up.
Yes.
I'll pull it up. Hold on. Let me get it. Are you sending it to my X now?
Yep. I'll do that. Just a second.
Let's watch our friend Nick supporting. Hopefully the message is open here. The enemy of my enemy. No, yes.
But it's funny, I was saying in the comment section, just while I'm pulling this up and sending it to you, that a lot of these groper leaders just happen to be beta males, which is ironic because they're supposed to be, they're supposed to project masculinity. That's what they claim. They claim to be alpha males, and that's what they want to portray themselves at. I've just sent you the link.
Yeah.
Your inbox isn't accepting.
My inbox? Okay, aren't you, what are you on? On X?
Yeah,
Don't I follow you there?
Yeah.
So, well, of course I am. It's saying you can't send me a message. Let me write. Oh, there, I got it. Yeah, got it. Let's see what this is. Boom. Oh, this... no. What did you just send me?
Let me try that again.
Yeah, I don't think you sent me that. I think you sent me something else because that just took me to a search of Nick Fuentes. Send me the actual...
Here we go. You should get that now.
Okay, let's open this.
She's a good candidate. I'm not going to lie.
Oh, he's saying she's... Hold on, let me just turn up this thing that stops the music so I don't get sound isolation. Let's get rid of the music so we don't get a strike here. And let's go here. Okay, this is a video. Oh yeah, because it's got... Hold on.
She's a good candidate. I'm not going to lie. I know a lot of Republicans don't want to admit it. She's likable. She's good looking. She's likable. Good energy. Just saying. She's a good candidate. I'm not going to lie.
Just saying.
So yeah. So guys, so if you want to claim that he didn't endorse. So he was actively telling people not to vote for Trump, and then on the other hand, he's saying she's a good candidate. I'm just saying. So I think it's pretty fair. There we go. I think he pretty much endorsed her. All right, let's continue watching this.
There really is no distinction, especially when it concerns matter of foreign policy. I mean, Biden gave Israel $20 billion last year. When Israel was in peril, when Israel was fighting this war in Gaza and against the Houthis and Hezbollah, it was Biden last year in April that gave Israel $20 billion, which is a huge military aid package. And Biden showed up when Iran retaliated against Israel in April of last year, and then again in October of last year, and even earlier when Israel initiated these provocations earlier in July and in April of 24. It was Biden that deployed the carriers to protect Israel and shoot down all the incoming missiles from Iran and from Hezbollah and from the Houthis, and actually offensively bombed them. Bomb the Houthis, bomb the Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria. And for all people like to say, the Democrats are abandoning our friends and empowering our enemies. No, actually the opposite is true. Biden gave this huge aid package to Ukraine, our big ally. They gave a huge aid package to Israel, our big ally. So I think that whether we had Kamala or Trump, we would be engaging in strikes against Iran right now. I don't think anyone even doubts that slightly. And so the question
everyone
again,
doubts
what is America? I don't care about being...
Everyone doubts that 100% because Biden was in there for the 4 years, and Israel couldn't do anything. What are you talking about?
October 7th
Since
started
October
under his watch.
Exactly.
It wouldn't have happened under Trump.
It would, and if it had, so after October 7, Biden was tying Israel's arms behind its back. So this idea that it would be the same and that Kamala would have done the strikes on Iran it's either delusional, but I think he's just plainly lying.
The Biden administration was really an extension of the Obama administration, and Obama was pro-Iran. He had a lot of pro-Iran and pro-Muslim Brotherhood figures in his cabinet, including Valerie Jarrett, who was the most notorious pro-Iran
Well, that's what Dinesh says in this argument. See, I wasn't 100% sure about that specific thing. I just thought he was a miserable failure. But yeah, maybe he's right. Okay, Avi, we proved that Nick did not endorse Kamala. He said that she was a dangerous opponent because she's a good candidate. Everybody knows that she's not endorsed. Dude, he said while saying she's a good candidate, which, by the way, then he's completely... I don't know why you take him seriously. He's been completely proven totally wrong. Wasn't reading the room at all. She was the worst candidate, hence the result. But if you're telling me that while he was telling people do not vote Trump, and then at the same time was telling people, listen, I got to admit she's a good candidate. If you're saying that that's not... So he's saying Trump's a bad candidate, do not vote for him, and then saying she's a good candidate.
What are you supposed to make of that exactly?
What am I meant to make of that? That he wasn't endorsed. So, yes, he kept his separation far enough that idiots like you can later say that he wasn't campaigning for Kamala. The only reason why you got to say he wasn't campaigning for Kamala is because he got it like this. He got it so wrong. He has zero credibility. He fought so hard against Trump in the lead up to the election for all the things that he's saying now, like for his support of Israel, mainly. That's really what he was angry about even then, because remember in the campaigns, Trump was opening a lot of the rallies with, minutes of silence for the October 7th, for the hostages. He was, campaigning hard for all these things, including Iran. And that was pissing Nick off because he was too Jewish friendly, whereas Kamala was avoiding those issues.
That's right.
Was trying to distance herself from the Biden administration's kind of position on this stuff. So Nick's natural position is like, oh yeah, I think she's the better candidate, but he didn't want to just straight up say it. But I don't even know why you guys are.
Presidential candidate, her vice presidential candidate, whatever his Waltz or whatever his name was.
Yeah.
So he was asked about the hostages by some concerned Jewish people, and he just ignored them. He brushed them off.
I remember that, and that's why Nick Fuentes liked him. Now, Nick, I don't know why anyone here in the comments who loves Nick is complaining that I'm saying that he was endorsing the other side. Nick here in the debate is saying that there's no real difference between the two. So what do you care? Why are you getting so defensive?
Republican and Democrat. It means nothing to me. I'm independent. I'm America
Exactly.
first.
He's
It's a
America
question
first.
of what's in our interest. And
Just
you can say,
Iranian.
you can appeal to this tribalism and say, you sound like Jimmy Carter. Okay, that's 50 years ago. What's in America's interest is not another regime change war, no matter our level of involvement. It's too unpredictable. It's too much chaos. There's no guarantee we'll get something better or something that isn't horribly worse. This is what Israel wants. This is not what we want. We want nuclear non-proliferation. They want regime change.
Okay,
we should have non-proliferation.
Okay, now, and again, it's great. It's amazing. I want to go to comments, questions. This is huge. Millions are tuning in right now. Just on X alone, millions.
I love how much he exaggerates. It was like, because when I pulled this up on X, there was like 800,000 views. Like, Alex Jones is just so over the top with everything. Oh, there's millions tuned in. There was 800,000 watched.
I've got to give Alex some credit, though. He is quite measured, considering, and that's probably why a lot of his base hate him. They think he's too pro-Israel, but I think he's quite measured in his objective. I don't agree with all of his views.
No. So he's quite. I'll explain it to you, because like I went on with him, and I only went on. I remember when I was in Davos. Not this. It was a year and a half ago, right? And I went on. Yeah, I went on because, like, you know, he's friends with Ezra and that. And I went on. I couldn't be bothered. Like at Davos, at the end of the day, you're dead. Like you've been working all day and trying to produce. Like you can't be bothered. But I went on because I supported him because he was actually standing up against the mob in his own crowd. He was telling his audience, the ones like in the comments that he's talking about here, they're all anti. He was telling them, no, you guys are nuts. These are jihadis. Israel's doing us a favor. And I started that episode. I go, man, thank you. Like, thank you for standing up. Even I know it must be hard, especially in your position, to do that because your whole base are, you know, Jew haters. Like, there's no, like a big part of your base, the vast majority, just want Israel wiped off the map just as much as Iran. They're Nick Fuentes people. And it's because, like if you look at all the other presenters, they very much talk like that. They talk like Nick Fuentes. They're all Fuentes fans. So Alex Jones is stuck between a rock and a hard place because he, unlike Nick Fuentes, he actually understands and has been campaigning for many years consistently against Islamists, against the threat of, Islamic immigration and like all those things. He's been a very strong advocate for that consistently. But now he's shifted to being anti-Israel, not because he believes it. It's because his base, it cost his bottom dollar. And that's why I've lost so much respect for him, because he's unwilling. He's just dishonest with it. I don't think with himself. Like, I think he's just being dishonest for the show, because at the end of the day, it's what pays the bills.
I think he does a good job of moderating this debate, though. Even though, look, I get what you're saying, but I think, if you compare him to other moderators.
Well, Piers Morgan, is that who you're comparing it to? Piers Morgan's an absolute joke as a moderator, but I still think it's a 2-on-1 here, and I still think that Dinesh is dominating on substance. Whenever Alex Jones interjects, it's to back up Nick or to go against what Dinesh is saying. But Dinesh comes back and in a number of times throughout the debate, he goes, okay, like one of them was like, touche, you make a good point. And that is because Alex Jones actually agrees with Dinesh on most of it. He's just... so what was it the touche about? It was the dumb argument that Alex was trying to make. Like, oh, no, well, if somebody came into my house and raped my daughter and killed my wife, and I chase after them, I'm going to wait for them to put down their child. That was, and that's him playing into his audience that are saying that Israel's genociding everyone because they're killing kids. And Dinesh is like, well, no, firstly, no, you wouldn't. If you had a gun, okay, Alex Jones, if you had a gun, if you had a gun, and you just witnessed somebody coming into your house, raping your daughter, killing your wife, and running, and then they ran and they picked up their child, you are shooting, Alex Jones. Do not even pretend you're not. You're not aiming for the child, and that's what Dinesh correctly pointed out in that analogy. Going, you're not going to try to kill his kid because you know the kid did nothing wrong. You are going to try and kill the perpetrator who just, raped your child and killed your wife. And if his child that he put as a human shield ends up getting killed, I guarantee you, Alex Jones, like the amount of sleep you're going to lose over that is minimal in comparison to the amount of sleep you're going to lose if you let him get away, or if, you know, the amount of sleep you're actually going to lose from the horrific incident that you just witnessed. But he accepted it.
We have to factor in Pallywood as well. A lot of the stuff that we see out of Gaza is staged. And that's well documented.
Yeah, look, but there's no question that a lot of civilians are dying. That is war, and it's a tragedy of war. And the way it could all end tomorrow is if they gave back the hostages and put down their arms. That lay down their arms and give back the hostages. That's it. That is the easiest, quickest way to end it if you really care about the kids. But Nick Fuentes, all these people, none of them care about the kids. That's never been about the kids. All right, let's keep watching this.
Everywhere else. This is a real, raw debate, folks. When you see corporate media, the questions are already prepared. It's been planned for months or weeks. This is real, unfiltered. None of us talk before the show other than text messages. Hey, are you ready to come on the show? That's it. So this was raw. This is what it's all about. This is real media. We're so blessed to be here. So thankful to the crew. So blessed for all the listeners and viewers tuning in and the clips of this going viral everywhere. This is what it's all about. Let me ask you both this question. I know you're both pundits and both analysts and you have your views, and I think you both come from a position of realism and integrity that you believe what you're saying. We all see the rose-colored darklies, but we believe what we're saying. Sometimes we're a little bit wrong. And me, I'm mostly right, maybe. But I want you to both do, and you know, basically, as a favor to me, do what I do. And I know you both do this. Because Nick, you know, said, I think Trump's very soon will, you know, hit Iran when he was running for office. The last time, you know, 8-9 months ago, right before he got elected. And he thought this would be a big crisis. And I know, you know, Dinesh has made a lot of predictions come true. I want to ask you both, first Dinesh, then Nick.
I like how you frame that. He goes, yeah, Nick predicted basically the end World War III if America strikes or Israel strikes or whatever. And then he goes, and then Dinesh is like, he predicted a lot of things that are true. And the funny thing is, like, his underhanded way of saying, well, you got that wrong, even though there's a lack of self-awareness because Alex Jones was cranking on about World War III now that, first when Israel struck and then when America struck. But in Alex Jones's defense, this was the 7th time he predicted World War III or announced the start of World War III this year.
You know, he claimed on New Year's Eve in 2000, he sent out an emergency broadcast claiming that Russia had sent ballistic missiles into the United States with nuclear warheads. And he caused a mass panic in the United States. This was on New Year's Eve 2000.
Listen, I think you can watch Alex Jones if you understand the entertainment value of it. But if you take him too seriously, like, I love when he gets one prediction right and X goes off with Alex Jones is right again or something like that. It's like, I've tweeted that stuff out. It's just funny, right? But the amount of predictions and shit that he says, he's bound to get a couple right here and there. It's not that he gets everything right. He's actually often wrong in his predictions. Some of his analysis is right, like especially when you actually listen to the information that comes out about like Islamists and jihad and a lot of other issues. He's actually like the substance of the information is right, but then his conclusions sometimes are wacky, and his predictions are often totally off the charts and rarely right.
I think I saw a comment. I want to address one comment. Someone in the comment section said, why do you think the Islamists, do they want to throw the Jews out of Israel, or did they just don't want them to exist at all? You got to realize, for your viewers out there, that it's not just about Jews. For the last 18 months, these Islamists have been chanting, openly calling in the middle of Australia's major cities for the destruction of this country, for Australia and all the other host nations all around the world. They don't want any country to exist. They want to basically spread their ideology across all different nations.
And their ideology is a worldwide Islamic caliphate. So that's not even controversial to say that. The fact that you don't know it reflects more on your, like, it's hard because a lot of time in the West people judge, in this case, Iran, but jihadis in general, from a Western perspective. But you're being naive if you do that because they don't share your ideology. They don't view the world in the same way that you and I do. But we're going to quickly, I want to finish in about 20 minutes, so we'll get to that. We've just got a super chat. Baz, thank you for the super chat. I'll take the Jews over jihadis. Have your space lasers, all good with me. Appreciate it, Baz. And if you keep up these super chats, I might lend you my space laser when I'm done. All right, let's watch this quickly.
Gut level. I think Trump thought he did the right thing, believed he was shutting this down, putting back the nuclear program. The left and others won't do that. They want to keep it going, which then adds to the war. The military are saying, don't worry, we're going to enrich. You're not going to stop us. I see this as the beginning of quagmire. I have a really bad feeling about where it's going. So here's the simple question, which is a super complex question. But most simple questions are. They look simple, but they're not. How do you gut level see this ending, Dinesh? This is regime change, wider war, Iran rolling over. Gut level, how do you see this ending, and how would you like to see it end? And what do you think we as American people can do to have this end in a peaceful way?
All right. I think that the Trump strike on the 3 nuclear facilities was a brilliant move because it was basically what it was is essentially an overnight job. We fly over there, we clobber their nuclear facilities, we don't suffer a single casualty. They don't even know we're there. They have no control over their own skies. We had all these fighter planes, by the way, accompanying those B-2 bombers because B-2 bombers can't defend themselves. But not a single fighter plane was really needed. They ended up just flying sort of decoratively around the B-2 bombers for no good reason.
He's so
and then
good,
they all came
Dinesh.
back safely. And what is the result? A crippling of Iran's nuclear facilities. So look, whether they were at 80%, whether they were getting there, whether they were almost there, whether they were weeks away, whether they were months away, who cares? Their program has now suffered a devastating setback. And even though initially the media tried to deny it, they've now pretty much come out and admitted it. Machiavelli says something very profound. People can get revenge for small injuries, but they cannot get revenge for large injuries. And what that means is that by and large, when you go poke somebody, they're going to come back and poke you back in the eye. On the other hand, if you give such a devastating blow from which they can never recover, they are too preoccupied with their own survival to even worry about you anymore. It's going to take a long time for Iran to get back on its feet. Now, I think that the mullahs are going to try to survive, to hang in there, to slowly rebuild their power. And so this is actually the downside of striking and then leaving, in a sense, sort of snatching partial victory out of the jaws of total victory. Because I don't think we're very far away from the mullahs essentially running away. There were even reports that some of the top Iranian officials were already starting to leave the country. And just before the regime falls, we go, oh, well, we better stop. You know, we don't really care about, quote, regime change. And so
yeah, but that's because Trump doesn't want a quagmire, Dinesh. Who knows who's going to come into the vacuum?
We never know, Alex. But the point is, when you have these dangerous situations in the world, you have to make a judgment call about whether what's going to come later is better or worse. We have certain red lines. One of them is we're not committing troops. We're not going to commit troops unless Iran attacks U.S. borders or U.S. bases. If they do that, then Trump's, we're not in a war, has to be set to the side.
So let me raise this now that we're deep into this. I got a few questions, Dinesh. If the mullahs are so insane and they just put a photo out, which goes to that side of the equation, on the other side, they did like in 2020 when they attacked the Iraq base and called Trump before and said we're going to launch 18 missiles in the desert, and they did as a face-saving event. They did that again this time, called ahead when they were going to hit Qatar, and did that. So if they're so crazy, why did they then telegraph all this and try to de-escalate?
Because, like I said, come back to the quote from Machiavelli, when somebody is down on their back and you're standing on top of them with your foot on their chest, they're going to behave themselves wonderfully. They're going to be Iran did not actually want to strike us because they realize, of course, the logic. If they strike us, we're going to strike them 10 times harder. And so they were like good pussycat. They basically were like, we'll behave ourselves. We'll pretend to attack you and you pretend to go ouch, ouch, ouch. I mean, this is actually the definition.
And the funny thing is, Trump didn't even pretend to go ouch, ouch, ouch. Trump just mocked him for that, like that joke of a show.
Of total victory. If you get into an MMA fight with some guy and at the end he goes, listen, I want to convince my family that I'm not a wimp, so I'll pretend to throw a punch at the very end and you pretend that you're bending over even though you've clearly won the fight. What does that tell you?
And so you say maybe the fatwa is that as well? How do we know some of their followers don't follow that order?
We don't know that, and I think we should take preparations to. I'm not a believer, as Nick is, in Iranian goodwill. I think if they put fatwas on you, there are going to be radical Muslims who are going to be willing to carry it out. There are probably some of those in this country. So we need to be taking preemptive or precautionary steps to make sure that we are protected.
So yeah, Nick, that's a lot to unpack.
See, that's where.
To answer the original question,
Alex
where this is going, I think we're trapped. I think we're trapped in a situation where now it's inevitable that there will be more tension. There will be more tension. There will be more conflict. We're not getting out of this. And it basically comes down to this. We had to deal with Iran. We overcame decades of distrust and decades of suspicion from Iran. We made a deal that satisfied Russia, China, the E3 countries, the European, France, Germany, and the UK, and the United States. We had to deal with monitoring, with verification, with 24/7 cameras, like Dinesh himself said. We know everything about their program because they disclosed it to us. And the IAEA report said they had no weapons program since at least 2009, but probably not meaningfully since 2003. So we had a deal. Everybody was playing by the rules for years. Trump pulled us out, and now they don't trust us again. Trump killed their general. Now they hate us. Then Trump engages them in diplomacy and he comes back to power. And there's all this fanfare about they're going to make a deal. We might be able to make terms with the United States. And what does Trump do? He says, we knew the whole time this was a ploy for a sneak attack by Israel to attack Iran. Then we come in and bomb them. And contrary to what Dinesh says, if there's some new report, I haven't seen it. On the contrary, U.S. intelligence, Europeans, Iran, and Israel all have said we did not destroy Fordo. We didn't even destroy their nuclear stockpile. They said we weren't even trying to destroy their nuclear stockpile. So now what they're saying is Iran still has a stockpile. They have centrifuges we don't know about. Iran says we're never giving up enrichment. They're moving heavy equipment to Fordo to rebuild it. And what are the...
It's so weird. He argues both sides of it, depends on the point that he's trying to make. He'll be like, they're not really, chasing a nuclear weapon. And then he'll say, in fact, there's a fatwa against it. They can't, according to Islamic doctrine, because, Islamic extremists are so peaceful. And then he'll say, now they're going to enrich it. Now it's the end of the world because this is all Trump's fault. He's like an anti-American leftist. These are all the rewriting of the history and how good the deal was, and the deal was so perfect, and Trump pulled out of a good deal with Iran is just so ludicrous. It's not even a real talking point. It's like these new talking. That's not even a talking point of the Islamists. He goes beyond defending the Ayatollahs harder than they defend themselves.
Israelis saying, the Israelis are saying we're going to treat Iran like Lebanon, which means we're going to bomb them all the time with no restriction. So, this ceasefire, Israel never makes good on ceasefires. They made one with Hamas. They didn't implement the second phase. They made one with Hezbollah.
They didn't implement the second phase. Hamas was supposed to return all those hostages and they weren't returning them.
Oops, and just a minor detail.
Yeah, and then all the... And again, what do you need a ceasefire? Why don't you just tell Nick, if you care so much about Hamas and Gaza, just tell them to release all the... Why do you even need a deal? The deal can just be simple. Give back the hostages and lay down your arms. But it's not, he's just a
They bomb them joker. None of them trust Israel. None of them trust us. And now, if we don't make a deal with
none of them trust Israel or us. We're all so bad, talking like a true leftist.
Iran, there really is only one other option. Iran doesn't trust us. Russia didn't bail them out. They're clearly vulnerable to Israeli intelligence. The only deterrent that they can get to prevent further hostilities, now they're talking about pulling out of the NPT and maybe getting a nuclear weapon. So as far as I'm concerned,
I thought they can't have it.
And Israel drove, they orchestrated this every step of the way. They engineered the confrontation in April last year. They attacked Iranian generals in Syria. They provoked the other confrontation in July. They killed the leader of Hamas in Tehran.
I'm Israel Chai. Shalom, mate. Thank you. Hot dog. Appreciate it.
I want to go to comments and questions now. Both of you making very interesting points. Quick analysis.
Can I just do a really quick one?
Go ahead.
Just a quick response, because it seems to me that Nick has been moving in a kind of crab fashion, saying one thing, contradicting it, then saying the opposite, and saying the opposite again. And here's what I mean. At the beginning of this debate, Nick, you said emphatically, Iran has every good defensive reason to want to build a nuclear weapon. You said Israel has nuclear weapons, and so Iran, in order to counter Israel, needs to have a nuclear weapon on its own. Then you said, but even though it's in their interest to build a nuclear weapon, albeit defensively, somehow a treaty is going to convince them not to do it. It's kind of like saying it's in my interest to do something, but because you put a piece of paper in front of me, I'm going to go, gee, I'm not going to do that because I'm such a nice guy. No, if it's in Iran's interest to build a nuclear weapon, they're going to try to do it openly or covertly, but they're going to try to do it one way or the other, according to your own logic. Then you said, we tried to bomb their facility. And you said, but you know what? We probably didn't do a very good job. And a lot of their nuclear facilities are in place. And in fact, they might just turn around and build a nuclear weapon. Now, you just told us that Iran has no desire to build a nuclear weapon. You told us earlier that it's against Islam. They've made some Islamic proclamation against it. But now you're telling us, first of all, that there were obviously some fairly advanced facilities. We tried to bomb them, but unsuccessfully. So they're still in place. And gee, if the Iranians get really mad, they can now just get together and put that nuclear bomb together. Well, obviously, that means if it's in their interest to do it, and they're not that far from doing it now, we were certainly right to bomb them. If anything, we should have had a second round of bombing to make sure we finished the job.
Exactly.
I want Nick to be able to comment. I'll keep you guys all night, but I want to go to these comments. You guys got to say we can do that. Callers and comments. But Nick, back to my question and respond to Dinesh. Quick summation. How do you see this ending? I know you don't have a crystal ball, but currently, where's this going?
Regime change, like I said, I think we're trapped. It's going to end in regime change one way or the other. As far as the apparent contradictions, I said at the start that they are engaging in nuclear hedging. And what does that mean? It means that they have the infrastructure, the expertise, and the technology to make a bomb if the security situation demands it. The reason they probably could have developed a bomb by 2012. The earliest estimate says that Iran could have had a bomb. They had all the pieces in place by 2010, and the longest term timeline, 2012 is when they could have had a bomb. Why did they not do that? Because getting a bomb would invite aggression, because the United States has a non-proliferation doctrine. But not having any latent ability would be weakness, and that would also invite aggression. Countries that don't have nukes can be destroyed by countries that have them. So that's why it's hedging. It's hedging their bets. Wait. Let me finish, because this is really important.
Alex Jones is trying to help him here, and he's not willing to take it.
So the reason why the deal changes this dynamic is because if we can give Iran confidence and assurances, we are not going to invade you, we don't have designs on overthrowing you, then Iran can have restrictions on their nuclear program, and they can ensure us they're not going to weaponize. I said there's other countries that do this too. Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, they're hedging as well. Why do they have nuclear programs? North Korea and China. Now, the reason they don't have nuclear bombs is because they can rely upon the United States to deter attacks
Iran to Japan and Taiwan. That's just ludicrous. That's insane.
It's insane. It's just such an anti-American. But it all doesn't make sense. Like like Dinesh said, he's contradicting himself, because that all shouldn't matter, because they shouldn't even be able to hedge, because there's this fatwa. That means that they can't have nuclear weapons. Yeah, so nobody should be threatened by it. So he's speaking out of both sides of his mouth.
He's clearly a propagandist for the Iranian regime.
North Korea and China. If that changed, it would be in their interest to develop a bomb. So it has to do with their level of confidence. It has to do with the current security situation. So they have the ability to make one. Getting one would invite aggression. Not having one makes them vulnerable. Now, we had a chance to make a deal that was based on mutual trust and assurances. We blew up that trust. That's why Iran started gradually increasing their stockpile of highly enriched uranium in reaction to cyber attacks, assassinations against their scientists, their generals, attacks against their nuclear plants.
Nick,
and then, wait, last thing, super important. When we bombed Iran, that's their worst nightmare. So that's why now they might be contemplating, oh, well, the breakout time is here. The security situation has changed. We need a nuke. We're imminently in danger of being overthrown. That's really important.
I want to be clear. I've been very good for the last hour and 45 minutes. You guys are doing a great job, by the way. I agree with you, Nick. And the CIA came out months after I said this and said attacking them may accelerate them towards finishing their bomb with nuclear hedging. So let me ask Dinesh to that, and we got to go to these questions and comments. I'm making you guys stay. We have to do it. Bunch of callers, bunch of comments.
Answer it.
What about that
better
issue
than any of us.
That this accelerates them into that? I think that is common sense, Dinesh.
Yeah, but there is a little bit of unrealism to it. And some of the times, I think what happens is we get caught in this spider web of analytics. This is Iran's motive. They're hedging. They're, as if we're listening to some stock trade. I got a hedge here. It's very simple. If you had a guy that lives down the street whose official doctrine is death to Alex Jones or death to Nick Fuentes, and that guy in his basement is making a bomb that can take out your home, take you out, take out your whole family, you're not going to sit around and go, well, what's the computation going on in their mind? You're going to say that, guess what? If that guy has the intention, which is to say the motive, and he has the ability to deliver this bomb in a catastrophic way, then guess what? If I've got some friend in the neighborhood, let's call it Israel, and they go, listen, we're happy to go do the job for you. We will go clobber that guy. But guess what? There's one part of the room we can't get to. If you will lend us a plane for one night, we will bomb that part of the house, and that'll be the end of that guy. No more debt to America. You'll be able to sleep safely at night, you and your family. Who wouldn't take that deal? Who would sit around going, well, we have a relationship based on mutual trust. They keep saying debt to America, but we don't really believe them because lots of other people say similar things. And so therefore, we're going to do an Obama-type deal in which, by and large, we kind of look the other way. We don't even have good ways to fully monitor what they're doing. Nick conceded they have the motive to do it, the interest in doing it, and they can do it pretty much whenever they want. And you're saying we should rest at ease when we have people like that with essentially dangerous weapons?
Okay, Dinesh, I want to go to comments and callers now. I just want to ask you guys one more question. People can look at it from Israeli perspective, American perspective, Iranian perspective, but we've seen this whole chain, and we've seen Wesley Clark, 15, 20 years ago saying he was in the Pentagon meeting, 7 countries of regime change, and we saw all that. That's why Americans are against this. It's not because we support the mullahs. It's because, we see this larger issue, and that's my personal view. I don't like the mullahs, but at the same time, I don't want to be lied to a quagmire much worse than Vietnam. 93 million people, potentially hidden nuclear weapons, and Russia and China have said no more dominoes are going to fall. This is part of a proxy war in World War III that's really already begun between the West and China and Russia. We all know that. So both of you, just 1 minute on where the world is. Has World War III already begun? And do you guys agree with me that this is a proxy war or a hybrid war?
I'm putting it fast because I got to hurry up.
What's left of the West and the emerging new multipolar world?
I would just sum it up in a single sentence or two, and that is basically, I trust Trump in the same way that I trusted Reagan. I think Trump himself, just like the rest of us, was there for Iraq. He learned the lessons of Iraq the same as the rest of us. The difference is, this is a guy who knows how to operate on the global chessboard. He's already proven it in his first term. He didn't drag us into any wars. He has been a no-war president. And I think he's a no-war president now. I think he's trying to settle the issue in the Middle East the same way as he's trying to settle the issue in Ukraine. This is not the same between the two parties. Kamala Harris would never have ordered this strike on Iran. Why? Because she has too many jihadis in her own party. This is the party of Ilhan Omar. It's the party, and I'm afraid it's a party. This is why I suggested that Nick might be a Democrat, because a lot of the things that he said tonight are pretty much an echo of Ilhan Omar. We can trust Iran. They don't have any evil intentions. They're a rational power. They don't have any ill will. Israel's the real problem.
Yes.
Well, I mean, that's Ilhan Omar.
Okay, final comeback, Nick. I have a few questions because we're going to go soon. It's an amazing live debate right now. Tuesday, July 1st interview. We're at 8:48 Central. We appreciate both these guys being with us.
Before I jump off, I want to say one thing,
Yeah, I mean,
because I've got to love you and leave you guys. But a lot of people, including quite a few of the viewers here tonight, that are putting up some interesting comments in the chat there, get triggered by the term woke right. They deny that term exists. It's a made-up term. And I just want to say, I mean, the reason why they get so triggered, these gropers, is because they know deep down that it's true. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so triggered.
Call themselves notices. It's the same as being awake. It literally, by definition, is the same. The woke left call themselves woke. The woke right call themselves notices.
But the reason why the woke definition is apt, what they have a lot in common with the left. One, despite claiming that they're Australia first or America first, they hate the West. They blame all the ills, like the Islamic wars. They blame it on America. They blame it on Australia. Tucker Carlson went to Moscow. He praised Putin. He did propaganda on behalf of the Russians. He went to a supermarket and did a whole propaganda puff piece. So that's one. The other one is that they engage in identity politics, just like the woke left. But in this case, they go the opposite. They base it around, white supremacy, which is basically the same as the left, except the left inverts it and they elevate other cultures and they say that other cultures are more supreme than white cultures. Yeah. But it's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
It achieves the same objective. It sows division and discord in society.
True point. Well done. Thanks for joining us, brother.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's get back to
the Democrat thing is just so crazy. I just don't even know how to respond to that. I mean, I guess the basis of the debate is I'm trying to talk about the present timeline. I'm talking about the details of Iran's program, the cause and effect, the mindset of these countries, how they calibrate, how they calculate the strategies. And then we get these kind of like fables, from the cave paintings of Lascaux, the Barbary pirates, Ronald Reagan. And it's just like, what am I watching here? I feel like we're just in two different universes. And, look, I was sympathetic to a lot of those arguments at one time. I read your books.
I'm just speeding up because I got a boot in a minute. Baz, thank you. Your chat wants to fund Nick's testosterone therapy. Let's start a GoFundMe. He definitely needs it.
Dinesh, and I watched your speeches when I was in high school, and I was big into Fox News and all that stuff, but I just feel like it's a completely different reality. And I would say that the big picture, which we can all see, is that the Israelis, once again, are trying to drive us into another one of their wars with some dimension of U.S. involvement that is really not in our interest. I don't trust Trump at all. Clearly, he has no control over Netanyahu, cannot restrain Israel at all, and the tail is wagging the dog. He pulls his chair out for him, and Trump said repeatedly, we want to make a deal, we want to make a deal. And Israel said, no, we accept no deal. We don't care about the terms. If it's good, if it's bad, we're bombing Iran anyway. And the second the time ran out on Trump's deadline, they were scheduling a 6th round of talks for that Friday and then that Sunday. Israel let loose, and they bombed Iran, and they started this war when they knew they couldn't win. They started getting pummeled, and they knew that would force the United States to intervene in a way that wasn't effective.
But like, what? Forget about rewriting history. He's rewriting what happened a week ago. What's happening right now? Like the framing of how that all played out is just so ridiculous.
Now we're in it. Now we're trapped in this problem. You're going to see it rear its head again in a few months, and there'll be more U.S. involvement. We spent $30 billion on this conflict so far. There's nothing America first about it. I don't trust Iran. I don't like Iran. I don't like our adversaries. I just want America's interest to be put first.
Very briefly, this is swear to God the last question. We're going to go to the callers and a few quick questions. If Trump is trying to stop war, and we hope that's the case, and then Israel wants to go forward, then is there any way out of a larger conflict? You're saying it's going to continue on. Then why is Trump saying today at Alligator Alcatraz that he's got a deal Monday? Have either one of you heard what that is? Did I try to get a lot of context for the party?
Well, no, I mean, all that I know is what's in the public record, that Trump is trying to get Israel not simply to conclude the war in Iran, but also to declare a ceasefire in Gaza. Now, Israel said right after October 7th, we are not doing this until we get the hostages back and until we have defeated Hamas. So there is unanimity in Israel. By that I mean the Likud, the Labour Party, across the spectrum, the Israelis believe you attacked us, we have a job to do. But Trump is telling them, no, I'm going to stop you along the way. So right away, I think here you see who's calling the shots. It's not Netanyahu, it's Trump. In fact, the very idea that a small country like Israel, which is, like I say, 10 or 12 million people, we have 350 million, we're bigger, we're stronger, we're richer. If somehow the Jews control us, then truly they are the master race.
All right, Nick, you got to respond to that. And then I keep saying last question, but pulling back from all of this, I literally wanted to just have a pro-Israel question, a pro-US question, pro-Iran.
Guys, I've got a boot. I've got a dinner on tonight, so love you, leave you. You can go watch the rest of that. I think Dinesh absolutely dominated on substance. You're not going to convince. It's not for Nick Fuentes fans to watch. I'm talking about the average normal person who is not full of hate of the Jewish state and going to one day regret that. People that actually love the West and stand for the West and don't believe all these ridiculous narratives. People that care in facts over identity politics. I would say go and watch the full thing. It is really good. No, I don't need a poo. I just actually got dinner, but thanks. Love you guys, and thanks for everyone for the super chats. Appreciate you. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. See you next time.